The tremor began in the space between spaces, where the Vishanti's light had never touched and ancient science had only theorized. Dr. Stephen Strange stood in Kamartaj's courtyard, hands weaving sigils that burned amber in the pre-dawn darkness, tracking an anomaly that shouldn't exist. For 3 nights, he'd felt it, a resonance that harmonized with the mystic arts yet sang in frequencies the Ancient One's teachings had never described. Energy that folded dimensions like origami while simultaneously operating under principles his surgical mind recognized as technological. "You feel it too." Wong's voice came from behind, concern evident. "It's been growing stronger." Strange didn't break concentration, his scarred fingers tracing patterns that revealed the multiverse's hidden architecture. "Not just stronger. It's calling. Like it recognizes something in." The sigil exploded. Reality split along seams Strange had spent years learning to navigate, but this wasn't the mirror dimension or the dark dimension. This was something else entirely, a doorway carved by forces that understood spacetime as engineering rather than mysticism. Through the tear, he glimpsed impossible architecture, a city that shouldn't exist, suspended in ways that defied both magic and physics, yet somehow honored both. The cloak of levitation snapped tight around his shoulders, alarmed. "Wong, close the," Strange began, but the anomaly had already decided. Energy erupted in cascading waves, each pulse operating on principles that married quantum mechanics with mystical theory. The courtyard stones cracked as dimensional barriers collapsed. Strange threw up shields, eldritch mandalas spinning to contain the breach, but the energy didn't attack. It invited. It recognized. And then it pulled. Strange tumbled through realities, his astral form nearly separating from his physical body as the cloak wrapped around him protectively. He saw flashes, galaxies connected by artificial wormholes, a network spanning millions of years, a race that had ascended beyond physical form through understanding rather than enlightenment. The mystic arts operated on belief and discipline, but these beings had achieved similar transcendence through pure comprehension of universal laws. They had made magic into science. Or perhaps proven science was always magic. The fall ended with shocking abruptness. Strange crashed onto a metal platform, the cloak billowing as it arrested his momentum inches from the floor. He rolled to his feet, hands already forming defensive sigils, and froze. The room was massive, all sweeping curves and crystalline surfaces that pulsed with soft blue light. Technology lined every surface, but not like any Stark had built. This was elegant, ancient, operating on principles that made his surgeon's mind and sorcerer's intuition sing in harmony. At the room's center, a control pedestal displayed holographic symbols that shifted through languages he'd never seen, yet somehow understood their mathematical precision. And surrounding him, weapons drawn, stood people in tactical gear with expressions ranging from shock to hostile readiness. "Nobody move." A man with military bearing and distinctive hair aimed what appeared to be an advanced sidearm with absolute steadiness. His finger rested alongside the trigger guard. "Trained, professional, waiting. Identify yourself. Now." Strange slowly raised his hands, palms outward, the amber glow of partially formed spells visible. The cloak settled around his shoulders, its collar high and imperious despite their situation. "Dr. Stephen Strange." He paused, scanning the room again. The architecture, the energy signatures, the way dimensional barriers felt thin here. "Where am I?" "That's not how this works." The military man's tone carried authority earned through command. "You just appeared out of nowhere in a secure facility. So let's try again. Who are you, and how did you get here?" A woman with intense focus and scientific curiosity barely contained behind tactical professionalism stepped forward, some kind of scanning device in hand. Her eyes narrowed as she studied readings that clearly made no sense. "Colonel Shepard, these energy signatures, they're not matching anything in the ancient database. It's like he's generating his own localized field that shouldn't be possible without a ZPM." "A what?" Strange lowered his hands slightly, confusion genuine. I was tracking an anomaly. An energy signature that intersected with mystical dimensional barriers. I didn't intend to. Mystical? Another voice, male, carrying scientific skepticism like a shield. A man with sharp features and brilliant, dismissive eyes pushed forward, his own scanner held like a weapon of reason. Oh, this is perfect. We're dealing with either an incredibly sophisticated infiltration using technology we don't understand, or we've got a genuine crazy person. In Atlantis. During first week of activation protocols. That word. Atlantis. Strange's mind raced through ancient texts, mystical references, myths that the Ancient One had hinted held more truth than fantasy. A city lost to time, built by a race of. The control pedestal behind them flared brilliant gold. Every screen in the room activated simultaneously, ancient text scrolling faster than human eyes could track. The woman with the scanner gasped, her device nearly falling from her grip. "That's impossible," she whispered. "The gene detector he's lighting it up like a Christmas tree. But he can't have the ATA gene, he's not from Earth's database, he just appeared." Actually, Strange said carefully, his analytical mind already forming hypotheses, "I am from Earth. Just. Probably not the Earth you're expecting." He gestured at the technology around them, at the city he could sense beyond these walls. "This is ancient technology, isn't it? Built by a race that transcended physical existence. You found their lost city." The military man, Shepard, exchanged glances with his team. Behind them, more personnel arrived, weapons ready but held with professional discipline. A woman with diplomatic bearing and steel in her eyes stepped through, radiating command presence. "I'm Dr. Elizabeth Weir, leader of the Atlantis expedition," she said, her tone carefully controlled. "And you're going to need to explain, very clearly and very quickly, how you know about the ancients and what you're doing in our control room." Strange met her gaze steadily, the cloak shifting slightly as if assessing threat levels. Around them, ancient technology continued to pulse in response to his presence, recognizing something in him that shouldn't be possible. His scarred hands, enhanced by years of channeling mystical energies, had been altered on levels that apparently resonated with genetic markers designed millions of years ago. "I'm a sorcerer," he said simply, knowing how insane it sounded and not caring. "The master of the mystic arts. And I think your ancient technology just recognized that magic and science are two paths to the same destination." He gestured at the displays showing his readings. "Which means we have a lot to discuss about the nature of reality, the principles of ascension, and why your dimensional coordinates just happen to intersect with a mystical anomaly powerful enough to drag me across whatever distance separates your Earth from mine." The skeptical scientist, McKay, based on Weir's glance, opened his mouth, undoubtedly to deliver a scientifically devastating rebuttal. The citywide alarms cut him off. Every screen shifted to tactical displays showing external sensors. Shepard's expression hardened as he read the data. "We've got 3 ships on approach vector," he announced, all humor gone. "Configuration unknown, but they're big and they just dropped out of hyperspace like they own the place." We're moved to the displays, her diplomatic mask cracking to show concern. "How did they find us this quickly? We only activated the city 3 days ago." Strange felt it then, a disturbance in the life energy of the galaxy itself, like something vast and hungry had just noticed fresh prey. His mystical senses, calibrated to detect threats across dimensions, screamed danger in ways his sorcerer's training recognized instantly. "Those ships," he said quietly, the cloak rising slightly around him in unconscious defense. "There's something wrong with them. They feel empty. No, not empty. Hollow. Like they're full of beings that feed on life force," a new woman's voice finished, her accent lilting and her expression grave. She was different from the others, carrying herself with warrior's grace that reminded Strange of the masters of Kamar-Taj. "The Wraith have found us. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. Indeed. Strange looked at the tactical displays, at the three massive vessels approaching this impossible city, at the team of competent, armed professionals who'd gone tense in ways that spoke of knowing exactly how dangerous their situation had become. He'd arrived seeking answers to a mystical anomaly. Instead, he'd stumbled into something far more complex, a war that operated on principles bridging everything he'd learned at Kamar-Taj with sciences he'd abandoned when he left surgery behind. The convergence wasn't an accident. Reality didn't make those kinds of mistakes. Around them, Atlantis hummed with power, ancient systems activating in response to threats approaching and a sorcerer standing in their control room whose very presence was rewriting the city's understanding of what was possible. The Wraith were coming. And Dr. Strange was about to learn that some nightmares required more than magic to survive. The control room erupted into controlled chaos. Personnel moved with practiced efficiency, hands flying over ancient consoles that responded with cascading light displays. Shepard barked orders while McKay practically vibrated with nervous energy, his fingers dancing across holographic interfaces that reconfigured with each touch. Strange remained where he'd landed, assessing. The cloak settled around him, its sentient fabric reading the room's tension. These people operated with military precision, but underneath ran currents of barely contained fear. Whatever these Wraith were, the expedition had learned to respect the threat. Shields are holding at 42%, McKay announced, not looking up from his console. Which is great, except we've only got enough power to maintain them for maybe 6 hours at full strength, and that's if those ships don't start shooting, which, spoiler alert, they absolutely will. Rodney. Weir's voice carried warning and reassurance in equal measure. Focus on solutions. I am focused. I'm brilliantly focused on the fact that we're about to be attacked by space vampires while we have a mysterious wizard standing in our control room who apparently makes ancient technology light up like he's the chosen one, and, McKay finally turned, pointing his scanner at Strange like an accusation. You. Yes, you with the magic hands and the theatrical cape. Care to explain how you're registering ATA gene markers that don't exist in our database? Strange met the scientist's challenging gaze. He'd dealt with skeptics before, the medical community had been full of them when he tried explaining mystical healing. But McKay's dismissive brilliance reminded him uncomfortably of his own pre-accident arrogance, when he believed the universe operated solely on principles surgeons and scientists could measure. The cloak is sentient, not theatrical, Strange corrected mildly. And your ancient gene detector is responding to cellular alterations caused by years of channeling extradimensional energies. The mystic arts restructure practitioners on quantum levels. Apparently, your ancients understood similar principles. Quantum, no. No, no, no. McKay shook his head violently. Magic isn't real. It's sufficiently advanced technology that you don't understand, or... Dr. McKay. The accented woman from before stepped forward, her warriors bearing evident in every movement. She studied Strange with eyes that assessed threats with calm expertise. Perhaps now is not the time for this debate. The Wraith are here. Weir nodded sharply. Kayla's right. Colonel Shepard, defensive posture. Dr. McKay, I need those shields optimized. And you, she fixed Strange with a look that demanded truth. If you're claiming you have abilities that work outside our understanding of science, now would be an excellent time to demonstrate whether they can help defend this city. Elizabeth. A man Strange hadn't noticed approached, older, with the careful movements of someone managing injury. His tone carried diplomatic caution. We don't know anything about him. He could be a security risk, yes, thank you Simon. Weir's expression tightened. We're also facing 3 Wraith ships with minimal power reserves and an expedition barely settled in. If he's hostile, we'll contain him. If he's an asset, we're idiots not to use every advantage. Strange appreciated her pragmatism. He gestured at the holographic display showing the approaching vessels. Tell me about them. The Wraith. Shepard moved beside him, his weapon still held ready but no longer directly aimed. The man's tactical mind was clearly running scenarios, weighing risks. What do you need to know? Everything. Strange focused on the sensor readings, his mystical senses extending outward carefully. The ships felt wrong, not evil in the way dark dimensional entities were evil, but hungry in ways that turned his stomach. You said they feed on life force. They're parasites. Tayla's voice carried barely contained anger. My people have been hunted by them for generations. They cull human worlds, feeding on our life energy until we are nothing but withered husks. Entire civilizations exist only to serve as their food supply. Strange's hands clenched involuntarily, scarred fingers twitching. He'd fought demons that consumed souls, entities that drained life essence across dimensions. But an entire species built on systematic predation? How do they feed? Through their hands. Tayla demonstrated, holding her palm up. They have an enzyme that breaks down cellular structures, absorbing years of life in seconds. I have watched them age strong warriors to elderly husks in moments. The room's temperature seemed to drop. Strange processed this through both his medical training and mystical understanding. Life force vampirism operating through biological mechanisms rather than supernatural means. It was horrifyingly elegant, evolution creating what dark magic achieved through ritual. And you've been fighting them how long? 10,000 years, McKay interjected, pulling up historical data that scrolled across holographic screens. The ancients accidentally created them during genetic experiments in this galaxy. Iratus bug DNA combined with human, long story, terrible outcome. The Wraith evolved, multiplied, and eventually forced the ancients to abandon Atlantis. They've been the dominant predatory species in the Pegasus galaxy ever since. Strange absorbed this, his strategic mind already analyzing. Your shields. They're energy-based. Ancient technology powered by what we call zero-point modules, ZPMs. McKay's tone shifted into lecture mode despite the circumstances. They extract energy from subspace, but we're down to one partially depleted unit. It's keeping life support and basic systems running, but sustained shield coverage against Wraith weapons. He made a dubious gesture. We'll last longer than I initially calculated, which means we might survive a whole hour. Rodney, we're warned again. I'm being optimistic. Shepard caught Strange's attention. You said you're a sorcerer. What does that actually mean in practical terms? Can you fight? Defend? Because we're about to need everyone capable of holding a weapon. Strange considered his response carefully. These people operated in a universe where ancient technology achieved what his world attributed to magic. They'd built careers on rational explanations. But the Wraith were approaching, and philosophy wouldn't stop an assault. He raised his hands, letting the mystic arts flow through scarred tissue and mystically enhanced neural pathways. There's no discernible technology, no energy converter, you're generating localized space-time distortions with just discipline, training, and understanding that reality is more flexible than most believe. Strange shaped the energy into a shield construct, then shifted it into chains, then dissolved it entirely. The mystic arts work by drawing power from other dimensions and channeling it through will and knowledge. Your ancients apparently achieved similar results through technology that manipulates the same universal forces. Tayla tilted her head, recognition dawning. Like the ancestors who ascended. They transcended physical form through understanding. Exactly. Strange felt a spark of connection with the warrior woman who grasped concepts her scientist colleagues were fighting to rationalize. Different methods, same destination. Your ancients used science to map what mystics explore through meditation. Both paths lead to manipulating fundamental forces. This is impossible, McKay muttered, though his eyes tracked every sensor reading with fevered intensity. Impossible things that are happening, which makes them possible, which means my entire understanding of physics needs recalibration, which I hate, which," he stopped, something on his screen catching his attention. Wait. Wait, that's, the ancient gene activation system just cascaded to secondary systems. It's never done that. Not even for Shepard, and he's got the strongest natural gene expression we've seen. Shepard moved to look at the display, eyebrows rising. What does that mean? It means our mysterious wizard is somehow more compatible with ancient technology than people who actually evolved from the humans the ancients left behind. McKay looked at Strange with an expression torn between scientific fascination and existential crisis. How is that possible? Strange had theories. The mystic arts restructured practitioners on levels that might appear genetic to ancient scanners designed to detect capacity for mental interface with technology. His years channeling extradimensional energies had altered his biology in ways that apparently mimicked whatever markers the ancients had engineered. But before he could explain, the alarms changed pitch. "They're hailing us," Shepard announced, tension evident. "Audio only." We're straightened, her diplomatic mask settling into place. "Open the channel." The voice that emerged carried harmonics that made Strange's mystical senses recoil. It was wrong, human vocal cords producing sounds human throats shouldn't make, layered with predatory intelligence that had refined hunting tactics across millennia. "City of the Ancestors. We sensed your awakening. Your shields cannot hold forever. Your supplies will not last. We have culled this galaxy for 10,000 years, and we are patient. You have two choices, submit to feeding and die quickly, or resist and die slowly," screaming. Silence filled the control room. Strange watched the expedition team's reactions, anger, fear, determination, grim acceptance. They'd known this moment was coming. Weir stepped forward. "This is Dr. Elizabeth Weir, leader of the Atlantis expedition. We claim this city under ancient law. We will not surrender. And we will not be food." Laughter echoed through the speakers, cruel and amused. "Ancient law died when the ancients fled. We are the inheritors of this galaxy now. Your defiance is noted. And irrelevant." The channel closed. Immediately, sensor displays showed the Wraith ship spreading into attack formation. Strange moved to the central control panel, his mystically enhanced perception reading the ancient systems in ways that made intuitive sense his scientific training couldn't explain. The city was vast, powerful, operating on principles that married technology with something approaching consciousness. And it recognized him the way it recognized Shepard. As someone capable of interface, of command. "How long until they're in weapons range?" he asked. "For minutes," Shepard replied. "Then we find out if ancient shields really are as good as advertised." "They are," Strange said quietly, his hands hovering over the console as information downloaded directly into his awareness. Not through mystical means, through the ancient gene interface that his altered biology had somehow unlocked. But McKay's right. You don't have enough power to maintain them indefinitely. "Oh, wonderful. The wizard agrees with me about imminent death." McKay's sarcasm couldn't hide his fear. "Anyone else have good news?" Strange looked at Weir, at Shepard, at the team that had traveled to another galaxy seeking knowledge and found themselves in a survival scenario. They were competent, brilliant, brave. But they were also isolated, underpowered, facing an enemy that had dominated this galaxy for 10 millennia. And he was a sorcerer standing in a city built by beings who had achieved through science what the masters of Kamartaj pursued through magic. "I might," Strange said carefully. "But it requires understanding whether your ancient technology and my abilities can work together. And we have less than 4 minutes to find out." McKay and Strange locked eyes, skeptic and mystic, scientist and sorcerer, both brilliant and both convinced they understood how reality functioned. The Wraith ships accelerated toward Atlantis, hungry and patient and absolutely certain of their prey's inevitable consumption. In the control room, ancient technology pulsed in response to a sorcerer's presence, and neither magic nor science alone would be enough to survive what came next. McKay practically dragged Strange to an auxiliary station, scanners still clutched in one hand while the other gestured frantically at holographic displays. If you're going to help, then help productively. These are the city's power distribution systems, primary grid, secondary backups, tertiary emergency reserves. All running through what we call a zero-point module, which is basically a battery that extracts vacuum energy from an artificially created region of subspace. Strange studied the displays, his mystical perception overlaying scientific data with intuitive understanding. The energy flow patterns resembled ley lines, conduits channeling power through crystalline pathways that responded to conscious intent. It's elegant. Like acupuncture points in a living system. It's engineering, not mysticism. But McKay's protest lacked conviction as he watched Strange scarred fingers trace energy flow patterns without touching the console. Although the ancients did design their technology to interface with human consciousness through genetic markers, which is deeply weird if you think about it too long, which I have, extensively. Rodney, status. Shepard's voice carried command authority honed through combat. 2 minutes 40 seconds to weapons range. Shields holding steady at 42%, which sounds better than it is because that's barely enough to stop a sustained assault, and the Wraith love sustained assaults, it's like their favorite thing besides eating people. Focus, we're interrupted firmly. Strange felt the city around him, vast and ancient and alive in ways technology shouldn't be. Atlantis was responding to his presence, systems activating that McKay's readings showed had been dormant since the ancients abandoned the city millennia ago. The gene interface wasn't just recognizing him, it was integrating, downloading city systems into his consciousness the way spell matrices integrated into mystical awareness. Your gene therapy program, Strange said, processing the information flooding his neural pathways. You can artificially grant the activation ability. Yes, but it's inconsistent. McKay pulled up medical files. Some people develop strong gene expression, others barely register. Shepard's natural, strongest we've found. Carson, Dr. Beckett, developed the therapy, but the success rate is maybe 60% for basic activation, 10% for advanced interface. Because you're treating it as purely genetic. Strange's medical training and mystical understanding converged. But the ancients weren't just engineering DNA markers. They were creating neural pathways for consciousness to interface with technology that operates on principles bridging physics and thought. That's, McKay stopped, his expression shifting through denial toward reluctant consideration. Actually not completely insane. The gene activation correlates with increased neural plasticity in specific regions. We've documented that. But attributing consciousness to technology is anthropomorphizing. Is it? Strange gestured at the consoles responding to their proximity. Or did the ancients build systems designed to work with minds capable of conceptualizing how to manipulate fundamental forces? Magic requires belief and will. Your technology requires genetic compatibility and mental interface. Different languages describing the same conversation. Taylor approached, her warrior's instincts clearly assessing Strange as potential ally or threat. You understand much for someone who arrived only moments ago. The city is teaching me. Strange met her steady gaze. Through this gene interface. Information is downloading faster than I can consciously process, but my training at Camartage involved similar techniques. Absorbing knowledge through mystical means rather than conventional study. Convenient, Shepard observed, weapons still held ready. Maybe too convenient. You appear out of nowhere, claim to be a wizard, and suddenly you're downloading ancient secrets. Strange appreciated the skepticism. In Shepard's position, he'd demand the same accountability. Test me. Ask about systems McKay hasn't briefed me on. McKay's eyes lit with competitive challenge. Fine. What's the auxiliary power coupling efficiency for the Northeast Piers shield generators? Strange didn't think. He knew, information surfacing from the city's systems integrating with his consciousness. 73% nominal, currently degraded to 68 due to crystal matrix stress fractures in conduit junction 7. Reparable with recalibration, but you'd need 2 hours and parts you don't have. The control room went silent. How could you possibly? McKay frantically checked his console, his expression cycling through shock, denial, and scientific crisis. That's accurate. Down to the specific junction number. I just ran those diagnostics this morning, and I haven't entered the data into any system you'd have access to. Because I'm accessing it directly. Strange tapped his temple. The same way the ancients did. Your gene therapy tries to replicate this, but you're treating it as biological engineering when it's really consciousness engineering. The ancients built technology that reads minds. 1 minute to weapons range, someone announced from Tactical. We're made a decision Strange recognized from his own leadership during mystical crises. She was about to trust someone unverified because alternatives were worse. If you can interface with the city this effectively, can you help optimize our defenses? Maybe. Strange moved to the central control panel, Shepard shadowing him with professional caution. But I need to understand the limitations. McKay, your power reserves, how long can shields hold under sustained fire? 45 minutes if they're only using conventional weapons. Less if they escalate. McKay joined him, rivalry temporarily overridden by survival instinct. But here's the real problem, even if we survive the initial assault, we're trapped. No reinforcements, limited supplies, and the Wraith have literally thousands of ships. Eventually, we run out of power, and they run out of patience. Strange's hands hovered over the ancient control interface, feeling it respond to his intent. The technology wanted to be used, designed for minds that understood how to bridge thought and action. What if we don't just defend? What if we make them reconsider whether Atlantis is worth the cost? With what? Shepard's skepticism was tactical. 3 puddle jumpers with drone weapons we barely know how to use, and a city we've occupied for 72 hours. With a demonstration that we're not helpless prey. Strange looked at Weir. I can't guarantee this works. The mystic arts and ancient technology operate on similar principles, but I've never tried integrating them. It could enhance your systems. Or it could cause catastrophic interference. 30 seconds. Tactical announced. Weir held Strange's gaze, making calculations that weighed extinction against unknown risk. Strange saw the moment she decided, the same commitment he'd made when accepting the Ancient One's training, knowing it meant abandoning everything familiar. Do it, she said. But if this goes wrong, Colonel Shepard has authorization to contain you by any means necessary. Fair enough. Strange pressed his palms flat against the ancient console, feeling the technology's eager response. Then he opened himself to the mystic arts, drawing on dimensional energies that flowed through Kamartaj's teachings, through the Vishanti's blessing, through years of discipline that restructured consciousness itself. Amber light erupted from his hands, spreading across the ancient control systems in patterns that made McKay's scanners shriek protests. The energy didn't force compliance. It harmonized, finding frequencies where mystical manipulation and ancient engineering resonated in sympathetic vibration. Oh no, McKay breathed, watching readings spike across impossible ranges. Oh no, the power distribution just increased by 30%. That's not possible. The ZPM's output is fixed, you can't just will it to produce more energy. I'm not increasing output. Strange's voice strained with concentration as he channeled forces that bent spacetime around Atlantis. I'm reducing loss. Your systems leak energy through dimensional friction. I'm smoothing the pathways. The city responded. Throughout Atlantis, ancient technology that had slumbered for millennia awakened. Consoles brightened. Systems activated. Shield strength climbed from 42% to 68% in seconds, and still rising. Weapons range. Shepard barked. Wraith ships opening fire. The tactical display showed 3 vessels unleashing energy weapons, bright lances of destructive force that had destroyed countless civilizations. They struck Atlantis' shields in cascading detonations that lit the city's protective barrier like lightning across amber skies. The shields held 73% and holding. McKay's voice carried disbelieving wonder. The power efficiency is... This shouldn't be possible, the ZPM's depletion rate just dropped by 40%. Strange felt the Wraith weapons impacting the shields, their energy signatures wrong in ways his mystical senses found deeply disturbing. But through the ancient technology interface, he understood the city's defensive systems with clarity that bypassed conscious thought. Atlantis was designed by beings who'd fought wars across galaxies. Its shields didn't just block. They adapted, learning enemy weapons and optimizing resistance. And now those systems were enhanced by mystical understanding of dimensional manipulation. "They're increasing fire," Shepard reported, voice steady despite the displays showing sustained assault that would have overwhelmed conventional defenses instantly. Focusing on the eastern shield sector. Strange felt it, 3 ships coordinating attack vectors to overload specific shield generators. Tactical thinking refined across 10,000 years of systematic predation. But the ancients had anticipated that, building redundancy and adaptation into every system. He channeled more energy, not from Atlantis' reserves but from dimensional sources the mystic arts accessed. The cloak billowed around him as power flowed through scarred hands into technology that welcomed the integration like reuniting separated aspects of unified knowledge. Shield strength increasing to 82%. McKay sounded personally offended by physics. You're pulling energy from somewhere, the power readings show input that doesn't exist. Dimensional bleeding, Strange managed through gritted teeth. Holding this much power while interfacing with technology operating on unfamiliar principles was like performing surgery while channeling the crimson bands of Cyttorak. The mystic arts access energy from adjacent dimensions. Your ancient technology can channel it if properly configured. We watched the tactical display with Diplomat's composure masking strategic calculation. How long can you maintain this? Unknown. Sweat beaded on Strange's forehead. I've never channeled dimensional energy through technological conduits before. Hours, maybe. Or minutes if they escalate. The Wraith ship ceased fire suddenly. The tactical display showed them holding position just beyond optimal weapons range, their organic technology. Strange could feel its wrongness even from here, recalculating probabilities. They're reassessing, Taylor said quietly. This is not the response they expected. Shepard studied the ships with tactical wariness. They thought we'd fold immediately. 3 ships against a newly activated ancient outpost with minimal power. Should have been easy pickings. Instead they're facing shields at 82% and stable. McKay's hands danced across his console, documenting readings that would require complete theoretical recalibration. From their perspective, we might have full power reserves and are just getting started. Strange carefully withdrew his direct connection to the city's systems, though he maintained the mystical enhancement he'd woven through the power distribution network. The shields remained stable, efficiency improvements holding even without active channeling. He'd essentially performed mystical acupuncture on ancient technology, optimizing energy flow through dimensional manipulation. The cloak settled around him, its sentient fabric clearly approving of the outcome. Strange felt exhausted but functional, a familiar state from long nights studying forbidden texts or battling entities that threatened dimensional stability. Status? We're asked. Shields holding at 80%, McKay confirmed, still looking personally betrayed by functional reality. Power consumption reduced by 38% from baseline. If they maintain current assault levels, we can hold for approximately 7 hours. If they escalate, he gestured helplessly. I have no idea. None of this should work. Strange leaned against the console, his mystical senses still extended outward. The Wraith ships held position, predatory intelligence recalculating. They'd expected prey. Instead, they'd found something that didn't fit their 10,000-year understanding of how this galaxy functioned. "They're leaving," Shepard announced with barely concealed surprise. The tactical display showed the 3 vessels turning, preparing to jump to hyperspace. "They're actually withdrawing. For now." Tayla's expression remained grave. "The Wraith are patient hunters. They will return with more ships, better tactics. This was reconnaissance, testing our defenses." The ships vanished in flashes of light as hyperspace windows opened and swallowed them. The control room remained silent for a long moment. Then McKay rounded on Strange, scanner thrust forward accusingly. "Explain. Everything. How you did that, where the energy came from, why ancient technology designed 10 million years ago just integrated perfectly with whatever impossible thing you were doing. Explain it in terms that don't violate every principle of physics I've spent 20 years understanding." Strange met the scientist's demanding gaze and smiled slightly, the expression he'd once given skeptical surgical residents who insisted a procedure was impossible before he proved otherwise. "I will. But first." He gestured at the city around them, at the technology still humming with enhanced efficiency. "I need to understand exactly what I just bound myself to. Because Atlantis isn't just responding to the ancient gene. It's recognizing me as something else entirely." On the main display, sensor data tracked the departed Wraith ships. They'd withdrawn, but everyone knew the truth Tayla had voiced: this was merely the opening move. The Wraith would return. In greater numbers. With escalated tactics. And Strange had just announced himself to an entire galaxy of predators as something unprecedented, a sorcerer interfacing with ancient technology in ways the city's original builders might not have anticipated. The convergence between magic and science had just begun, and its consequences would ripple across a galaxy that thought it understood the universe's rules. Dr. Carson Beckett arrived in the control room with medical scanner and barely contained Scottish exasperation. "Someone want to tell me why the city's biosensors just flagged an unknown entity generating energy signatures that look like a bloody dimensional breach is happening inside a human body?" Strange raised one hand slightly. "That would be me." Beckett stopped, taking in the crimson cloak, the precisely trimmed goatee, and the general air of someone accustomed to violating natural law. "Of course it is. Right then. You're either having a catastrophic medical emergency or you're the reason the entire medical bay's scanners just had a collective seizure trying to categorize what you are." "The second one," Strange confirmed. "Though I appreciate your concern. Well." Beckett activated his scanner, medical curiosity overriding alarm. "Dr. Elizabeth Weir mentioned we had an unexpected guest who claims to be a wizard. I'm Carson Beckett, Chief Medical Officer, and you're about to let me run every diagnostic I can think of because I've never seen biosigns like yours and it's driving me spare." Shepard holstered his sidearm finally, though his tactical awareness remained evident. "Doc, medical mystery hour can wait. We need to debrief what just happened and figure out next moves before the Wraith come back with friends." "They will return," Tayla said with certainty born from lifelong experience. 3 ships were a probe. They tested our defenses and found them stronger than anticipated. The Wraith respect strength, but they will not abandon this city. It is too valuable. We gestured toward the conference room visible through transparent walls. Then we need to understand what our capabilities actually are. Dr. Strange, Colonel Shepard, Dr. McKay, Tayla, with me. Carson, I promise you'll get your medical data, but right now we need strategy. The conference room offered panoramic views of Atlantis's towers stretching toward an alien sky, the city's elegant architecture testament to the civilization that had built impossibilities and then transcended physical existence entirely. Strange took it in with appreciation. The Ancient One would have loved this place, where science and enlightenment merged. We're sat at the head of the table, diplomat's composure masking the weight of leading humanity's most isolated expedition. Let's start simple. Doctor Strange, what exactly are you, and what did you do to our power systems? Strange folded his hands, the tremor in his fingers evident but controlled. I'm a neurosurgeon by training. Rather. After an accident destroyed my hand's fine motor control, I sought healing through unconventional means and found Kamar-Taj, a sanctuary where masters teach the mystic arts. Magic, in layman's terms, though calling it that undersells the discipline and study required. McKay opened his mouth to protest, but raised one hand. Continue. The mystic arts manipulate reality through accessing energy from other dimensions, places your science would classify as parallel universes or subspace domains. With proper training, practitioners can reshape matter, open portals across space, manipulate time, and interface with forces that operate outside conventional physics. Strange met each person's gaze in turn. Your ancients achieved similar results through technology. Different methodologies, identical underlying principles. You're saying magic and ancient science are the same thing. Shepard's tone remained skeptical but thoughtful. That's a hell of a claim. Not the same. Convergent. Strange gestured, forming a simple mandala of amber light that rotated in midair. McKay's scanner immediately began shrieking. I access dimensional energy through discipline and will. Your ancients built technology to manipulate those same energies through engineering. When I interfaced with Atlantis' systems, the city recognized the energy signatures as compatible with its operational parameters. McKay studied his scanner like it had personally betrayed him. The energy you're generating is creating localized spacetime distortions. Measurable, quantifiable distortions. Which means it's not magic, it's physics I don't understand yet, which I hate, but at least it's not actually supernatural. Call it whatever helps you sleep, Strange said with faint amusement. The ancients probably had similar debates before they transcended. Ascension. Taylor leaned forward, interest evident. You know of this? Conceptually. The mystic arts include practices aimed at transcending physical limitation, astral projection, consciousness expansion, dimensional awareness. Your ancients apparently achieved full transcendence through understanding reality's fundamental nature. Strange felt the city's presence at the edge of awareness, systems still humming with enhanced efficiency. I'm curious whether they viewed it as scientific achievement or spiritual enlightenment. Both, probably. Weir's expression suggested she'd wrestled with similar questions. The ancients left behind fragments of their philosophy. They believed in knowledge as the path to transcendence, understanding rather than faith. But their technology responds to thought and will in ways that blur lines between science and consciousness. Which brings us to practical concerns. Shepard's military pragmatism cut through philosophical speculation. You boosted our shields and improved power efficiency. Can you do it again? More importantly, can you teach us how to do it without needing a wizard on call? Strange considered this carefully. The efficiency improvements should hold. I essentially optimized your power distribution network using principles of dimensional manipulation. Think of it as reducing friction between your technology and the underlying spacetime it operates within. He paused. As for teaching you, that's more complex. The mystic arts require years of training. Your gene therapy creates biological interface capability, but not the consciousness discipline to channel dimensional energies safely. But the city's gene response to you was stronger than anything we've documented, McKay interjected, pulling up comparison data on a tablet. Even Colonel Shepard, who has natural gene expression, doesn't trigger the kind of cascade activation you caused. The ancient database systems lit up like you're some kind of super ancient. Because my cellular structure has been altered by years of channeling extra-dimensional forces. Strange held up his scarred hands. These injuries ended my surgical career. But mystical training restructured the damaged tissue on quantum levels. Your gene detectors read that restructuring as enhanced compatibility markers. Beckett, who'd been quietly scanning from the doorway, finally spoke up. Your cellular regeneration is remarkable. I'm seeing evidence of catastrophic nerve damage that somehow rewired itself into functional pathways. And your neural activity, he shook his head in disbelief. You're using portions of your brain that are normally dormant, and generating energy signatures I can't even classify. The mystic arts reshape practitioners fundamentally. Strange met Beckett's medical fascination with understanding. He'd once been equally driven by diagnostic mysteries. Physical, mental, and spiritual changes that allow consciousness to interact with reality in ways evolution didn't optimize for. Which means you're potentially the most compatible person with ancient technology we've encountered. We're leaned back, strategic calculations evident. Even more than Colonel Shepard, who can activate systems most of our gene therapy recipients can't access. Shepard raised an eyebrow. Should I be offended? Think of it as backup, Strange said. You're naturally compatible. I'm artificially compatible through mystical restructuring. Between us, we can probably access ancient systems that require higher-level consciousness interface. McKay's expression shifted through competitive jealousy toward scientific possibility. If that's true, there are sections of the city we haven't been able to activate. Ancient laboratories, defensive systems, possibly even the chair room, which houses weapons capable of destroying Wraith Hive ships if we can power it properly. Show me. Strange stood, the cloak billowing slightly. I came here by accident, but I don't believe in accidents. If the convergence between dimensions brought me to Atlantis precisely when you're facing existential threat, there's probably a reason. Or it's just terrible timing, Shepard suggested, but he was already moving toward the door. Either way, let's see what our wizard can unlock. They moved through Atlantis's corridors, ancient architecture flowing in organic curves that suggested the city had grown rather than been built. Strange felt the structure's presence more strongly now, conscious awareness that recognized his passage, systems activating at proximity in ways that unnerved the Marines standing guard. The city's never done this, one Marine muttered as lights brightened at Strange's approach. It responds to Colonel Shepard, but this is different. It's like it's been waiting, Taylor observed quietly, keeping pace beside Strange with warrior's grace. The ancestors left Atlantis dormant for 10,000 years. Perhaps they knew someone would come who could bridge their legacy with powers they never fully mastered. Strange glanced at her. You believe that? I believe the ancestors were not infallible. They created the Wraith through arrogance, then fled rather than face their mistake. Taylor's tone carried ancient anger. My people have paid for their failures across centuries. If their city now awakens for someone who might help end that cycle, I welcome it. They reached a section sealed behind crystalline doors that pulsed with warning symbols. McKay immediately began scanning. This is one of the high-security laboratories. We've tried every authorization protocol we know, but the genetic lock won't recognize anyone. The ancients must have restricted it to specific individuals. Strange approached the door, feeling it assess him through means that transcended genetics. The ancient security system was evaluating consciousness, intent, capacity. It wanted to know not just who he was, but what he was capable of understanding. He pressed his palm against the crystalline surface and opened his awareness fully, letting the city see his training, his discipline, his years of studying realities most people couldn't perceive. The mystic arts had taught him to navigate dimensions where thought and existence blurred. The ancients had built technology that operated on similar principles. The door recognized kinship. Ancient text scrolled across the crystal, and Strange understood it, not through translation but through direct comprehension downloaded via the gene interface. The laboratory beyond contained experimental technology the ancients had deemed too dangerous for general access. Consciousness-expanding devices. Dimensional manipulation equipment. Tools that required operators capable of maintaining mental stability while interfacing with forces that could shatter unprepared minds. The door opened. McKay immediately pushed forward, scanner extended like a talisman against the unknown. Oh, this is, these are ancient research stations that predate Atlantis' arrival in Pegasus. Some of this equipment might be from their original galaxy, before they fled the Ori. He stopped, staring at the center of the laboratory where a device floated in suspended containment. It resembled a stylized eye, crystalline and complex, pulsing with energy that made Strange's mystical senses recoil. "What is that?" Shepard asked quietly, his tactical instincts clearly screaming danger. Strange approached carefully, the cloak rising protectively around his shoulders. The device's energy signature was wrong, not evil, but operating on principles that violated natural law even by mystical standards. "It's a consciousness amplifier. The ancients built it to accelerate the path to ascension by forcibly expanding awareness beyond physical limitation." "Did it work?" Weir's question carried diplomatic caution. "Based on these readings?" McKay studied his scanner with growing alarm. "It worked too well. The database mentions catastrophic ego dissolution and irreversible consciousness fragmentation. They built something that could show people enlightenment, but most minds couldn't handle actually seeing it. So they locked it away." Strange circled the device, mystical perception analyzing its function. The ancients had created technology that did what the Ancient One's training accomplished slowly over years, ripping away the barriers between self and infinite reality. This could kill everyone who used it. Or it could create ascended beings. Apparently, the ancients couldn't control which outcome occurred. Tayla kept her distance, warrior's instinct wise. Why would they build such a thing? Desperation, probably. Strange thought of his own journey, destroyed hands driving him to seek impossible healing, finding instead impossible knowledge. The ancients were dying from a plague when they ascended. Maybe they built this hoping to save their civilization by accelerating evolution. Instead, they discovered consciousness isn't meant to expand that quickly. And yet here it sits. Shepard studied the device with military assessment. Locked in a room that apparently only opens for people who can handle seeing it. Which means they expected someone eventually to come who could either use it safely or destroy it properly. Strange met his gaze, understanding crystallizing. "You think they left it for me? I think you opened a door that's been sealed for 10,000 years, and inside is technology designed to do what you already claim to do, manipulate consciousness and reality. That's either the universe's idea of a bad joke or destiny doing its heavy-handed foreshadowing thing." "I don't believe in destiny," Strange said automatically, then paused. "Though I've fought entities that manipulate time and seen futures that might be. Coincidence starts looking suspicious when it accumulates." McKay was already documenting everything, scientific curiosity overriding caution. "If we could understand how this device works, we might be able to reverse engineer ancient ascension technology. Not to use," he added quickly at everyone's alarmed expressions. "But to understand their transcendence process. It could revolutionize our comprehension of consciousness itself. Or it could drive you insane." Strange gestured at the warning labels surrounding the containment field. The ancients classified this as prohibited technology for reason. Some knowledge comes at costs that aren't worth paying. But you could use it. Weir's statement wasn't quite a question. Your training prepared you for exactly this kind of consciousness expansion. Strange considered lying, then rejected the impulse. These people had accepted him despite impossible circumstances. They deserved honesty. Maybe. The mystic arts include practices that expand awareness carefully, building mental resilience across years. This device achieves similar results instantly. It might enhance my abilities or it might shatter my mind. I genuinely don't know. Then we leave it alone. Shepard's tone brooked no argument. We've got enough problems without experimenting with ancient technology that comes with warnings about ego dissolution. Agreed, Weir said firmly. Seal the room. Document everything, but no one touches that device without unanimous leadership approval and extensive safety protocols. Strange nodded, relieved. The device called to his curiosity. What sorcerer wouldn't want to shortcut the path to enlightenment? But the Ancient One had taught patience, discipline, and respect for the journey's value beyond its destination. Some shortcuts weren't worth taking. They exited the laboratory, the door sealing behind them with finality. But as they walked back toward the control room, Strange felt the city's awareness focused on him with increased intensity. Atlantis had tested him with that chamber, evaluating whether he would rush toward power or demonstrate the wisdom to refuse it. He'd apparently passed some threshold, because throughout the city, more systems began activating. People? McKay's scanner shrieked alarm. Citywide activation cascade. Sections that have been dark since we arrived are lighting up. Ancient database access expanding. We're gaining control of systems that were completely locked before. Because I refused to use the device. Strange understood with certainty that felt like mystical intuition and ancient programming simultaneously. Atlantis is conscious on some level. It was waiting to see if I'd demonstrate the restraint its builders valued. A city is judging your character. Shepard's tone suggested he'd given up on normal making sense. Sure. Why not? This is my life now. They reached the control room where tactical displays showed unchanged status, no Wraith activity, no immediate threats. But the city itself had transformed, ancient systems online that expanded their capabilities exponentially. We studied the displays with Diplomat's calculation of shifting strategic position. McKay, assessment. We just gained access to approximately 30% more of the city's systems. Defensive capabilities increased. Sensor range expanded. And, he pulled up data that made his expression shift toward disbelief. We have partial access to the ancient database now. Not complete, there are still locked sections, but we can access technical specifications, historical records, scientific data that was completely restricted before. Because Atlantis decided to trust me. Strange felt the weight of that responsibility. Or it's testing me further. Either way, you've gained capabilities you didn't have an hour ago. At the cost of having a wizard the city apparently considers important enough to unlock classified technology for. Shepard's pragmatism cut through the moment. Which makes you either an asset or a massive security risk, possibly both. Definitely both. Strange met his gaze steadily. I didn't ask to be here, Colonel. But I'm not leaving until I understand why dimensional convergence brought me to Atlantis precisely when you need someone who can bridge mysticism and ancient science. And when the Wraith return? Taylor asked quietly. Strange thought of the dimensional barriers he could manipulate, the shields he'd enhanced, the city responding to his presence like reuniting with something lost. Then we find out if magic and ancient technology together are enough to survive what your galaxy throws at us. Outside Atlantis's towers, the Pegasus galaxy turned with indifferent beauty, home to the Wraith, to countless human worlds living in fear, to mysteries the ancients had left unsolved when they ascended. And in the control room, a sorcerer and a military expedition faced the reality that their convergence had fundamentally altered Atlantis's capabilities and dangers in equal measure. The Wraith would return. And when they did, they would discover that the city of the ancients had awakened something its builders might not have anticipated, the merger of two philosophies that had always circled the same truths through different approaches. The expedition's first joint mission launched 6 hours after the Wraith withdrawal, and Strange found himself strapped into what McKay called a puddle jumper, with professional soldiers who'd accepted his presence with varying degrees of skepticism. The ancient vessel, small, elegant, designed for gate travel, responded to his proximity with eagerness that made the pilot nervous. It's doing that thing again. Lieutenant Aiden Ford, young and competent with energy that reminded Strange of eager residents, watched his console with confusion. Systems activating before I touch the controls. Like it knows what I'm about to do. It probably does. Strange sat behind Shepard in the co-pilot position, the cloak arranged carefully in the confined space. Ancient technology interfaces with consciousness. You're thinking about activating systems, and the jumper is reading that intent through the gene interface. Except Ford's gene expression is moderate at best. Shepard piloted with casual expertise, the jumper responding to his thoughts smoothly. He shouldn't be triggering this kind of response. Unless, he glanced back at Strange. The city's new favorite person is somehow boosting everyone's effectiveness. Possibly. Strange felt the jumper's systems humming around him, crystalline technology that blurred lines between vehicle and extension of pilot's will. The mystic arts include techniques for enhancing others' capabilities through energy sharing. If I'm unconsciously channeling that through the ancient systems, it might be amplifying your gene interface effectiveness. McKay, strapped in beside Taylor, made an exasperated sound. You're casually mentioning you might be mystically enhancing our neurological compatibility with 10-million-year-old technology, like that's a normal Tuesday afternoon activity. For me, it kind of is. Strange watched through the jumper's forward viewport as Atlantis's gate room approached, massive ring of crystalline metal inscribed with symbols representing constellations in this galaxy. Though usually I enhance sorcerer's spellcasting, not pilot's ability to fly alien spacecraft. The Stargate dominated the jumper bay, standing ready for travel to any of thousands of worlds the ancients had connected across Pegasus. Strange felt its potential like standing before a mystical portal, except this was engineered rather than conjured. Dialing now. Shepard's thought command activated the gate sequence. 7 chevrons locked in cascading conformation, each symbol lighting as the ring rotated. Ancient technology and astronomical precision creating artificial wormholes stable enough for matter transmission across light years. The event horizon exploded outward in a horizontal vortex that made Strange's mystical senses recoil, dimensional barrier torn open through brute force engineering. Then it stabilized into shimmering surface like vertical water, defying gravity through principles his physics understanding found simultaneously elegant and disturbing. That never gets old, Ford said with genuine awe. Strange agreed silently. The Stargate achieved through technology what sling rings accomplished through mysticism. Tearing holes in spacetime to enable instantaneous travel. Different methodologies, identical result. Destination is P3X 421. McKay consulted his tablet while trying not to look at the active wormhole. MALP probe showed no signs of Wraith activity, minimal technology, pre-industrial human settlement. Should be safe for basic reconnaissance and testing whether our wizard affects gate travel. I have a name, Strange pointed out mildly. You have a title that sounds like a comic book character. I'm coping through dismissive nicknaming. But McKay's nervousness about the mission was evident despite sarcasm. Shepard piloted the jumper toward the event horizon with confidence that spoke to dozens of successful gate transits. Everyone strapped in. Strange, if you feel weird during travel, speak up. Last thing we need is mystical interference destabilizing the wormhole. Comforting thought. Strange braced himself as they approached the shimmering barrier. What does gate travel feel like? You're about to find out. They hit the event horizon at speed. Reality inverted around Strange in a sensation that combined falling, flying, and having his consciousness spread across light years simultaneously. The mystic arts had prepared him for dimensional transitions, but this was different, technological rather than mystical, his body converted to energy and transmitted through spacetime shortcuts the ancients had engineered into the galaxy's fabric. His mystical senses screamed with disorientation as dimensional barriers compressed in ways magic rarely attempted. The cloak wrapped tighter around him, its sentient fabric equally disturbed by being temporarily converted to energy patterns and reconstituted. Then they were through, reality snapping back into normal configuration with jarring abruptness. Strange gasped, his hands instinctively forming defensive sigils before conscious thought reasserted control. That was disorienting the first time. Shepard finished, piloting the jumper out of the gate onto an alien world's surface. You get used to it. I've traveled across dimensions, through time, and into the mirror dimension. Strange steadied his breathing, medical training helping process the physiological shock. Gate travel is somehow worse than all of those. Because it's not mystical, McKay said with slightly smug vindication. It's pure physics. Your body was converted to energy, transmitted through a stable wormhole, and reconstituted at this end. No magic involved, just mathematics and engineering so advanced it might as well be magic. Taylor placed a hand on Strange's shoulder with surprising compassion. The first journey through the Stargate is always difficult. Even those of us who have traveled the ring our entire lives remember that initial disorientation. Strange nodded appreciation, then focused on their surroundings as the jumper settled on solid ground. Through the viewport, an Earth-like world spread in familiar yet alien configuration. Two suns hung in greenish sky. Vegetation resembled terrestrial plants but with color variations that suggested different photosynthesis chemistry. In the distance, a settlement showed primitive construction, wood and stone structures arranged in defensive circles that spoke to populations familiar with threat. Welcome to the Pegasus Galaxy. Shepard powered down the jumper's systems while keeping engines ready for quick departure. Where every human settlement exists because the ancients seeded them here 10,000 years ago, and most of them live in fear of being the Wraith's next meal. They exited the jumper into alien atmosphere that tasted slightly copper-tinged. Strange's mystical senses immediately detected differences from Earth, dimensional barriers thinner here, perhaps weakened by millennia of Wraith feeding or gate network usage. The planet felt scarred in ways his medical training recognized as systemic trauma. Life signs. Ford scanned with a handheld device. Approximately 300 humans, gathered in that settlement. Some approaching our position, probably saw the gate activate. Defensive posture but friendly. Shepard's hand rested near his sidearm with professional readiness. We don't know how they'll react to, he gestured at Strange's crimson cloak and generally mystical appearance. To you. First contact protocols. Taylor moved forward with natural authority, her understanding of Pegasus cultures invaluable. Let me speak first. Many worlds remember the ancestors with reverence. Your appearance, she studied Strange thoughtfully, may be interpreted as significant. A group emerged from the settlement, led by an elderly woman whose bearing suggested leadership despite advanced age. She moved with confidence toward the Stargate, flanked by younger warriors carrying spears. Her eyes fixed on Strange with immediate recognition that made his mystical senses tingle warning. Ancestor. She spoke in accented but comprehensible English. Legacy of ancients spreading human populations with linguistic compatibility. You have returned. Strange exchanged glances with Shepard, then stepped forward carefully. I'm not an ancient. My name is Stephen Strange. We come from Atlantis, seeking peaceful contact. The woman's expression shifted through confusion toward something more complex. Atlantis wakes. The city of the ancestors rises again. Her voice carried hope mixed with fear. Then the Wraith will come. They always come when the ancestors stir. Taylor moved beside Strange, her presence reassuring to the population clearly on edge. The city has awakened, yes. But we are not ancestors, we are humans like you, seeking to understand their legacy and protect against the Wraith. Yet he, the elder gestured at Strange. Wears the marks of power. His presence disturbs the air itself. Are you not one who walks between worlds? Strange felt the planet's thin dimensional barriers responding to his presence, mystic energies bleeding through more easily than Earth's thicker reality. To populations sensitized by millennia of Wraith culling, beings who fed on life force in ways that bordered on supernatural, his mystical nature was probably evident. I am a sorcerer, he said, deciding honesty served better than deception. I manipulate forces that exist beyond normal perception. But I am human, and I fight threats to humanity. The Wraith are enemies of all living beings. The elder studied him with eyes that had seen too much suffering. The Wraith came to our world 6 seasons past. They culled 100 of our people, taking our strongest and youngest. We hid in caves, praying to ancestors who never answered. Her voice carried ancient grief. You say you fight the Wraith. Can you protect us when they return? Shepard stepped forward. We can't guarantee protection for every world. But Atlantis is working to develop defenses against the Wraith. If you're willing to share information about recent cullings, it helps us understand their patterns. McKay had his tablet out, documenting everything. Were the Wraith ships Hive class? How many darts? Did they seem coordinated or opportunistic? Ford maintained perimeter watch while the diplomatic exchange continued. But Strange felt something else, a disturbance in the planet's life energy that made his mystical senses sharp with alarm. He extended his awareness carefully, astral perception reaching beyond physical senses. There. Underground, perhaps a mile distant. Something vast and alive but wrong, organic technology that radiated hunger like palpable force. We have a problem, Strange said quietly. Amber light flickered around his hands unconsciously. There's something under the surface. Large, alive, and, his mystical training identified predatory essence instantly. Wraith. Shepard's weapon was drawn immediately, his tactical mind processing threat assessment. Ford, scan underground. McKay, are you picking up anything? McKay's scanner shrieked alarm. Oh no. Oh, there's a buried Wraith dart. Must have crashed during the last culling. It's still powered, which means the ground erupted 30 yards from the settlement. Soil and rock exploded upward as organic technology designed for atmospheric combat tore free from makeshift grave. The Wraith dart was damaged, hull breached, one engine failing, but functional enough for its cargo. The culling beam activated. Villagers scattered in panic as the dart's blue light swept across settlement approaches. Wherever it touched, humans dematerialized into storage matrices designed to keep food fresh until feeding time. Screams filled alien air as population that had barely survived one culling faced another. Take it down. Shepard fired his P-90, bullets sparking off organic armor. Ford joined him, disciplined fire aimed at exposed systems. But the dart was moving erratically, damaged controls making it unpredictable. Strange didn't think, he reacted with sorcerer's instinct honed through dimensional threats. His hands wove sigils that pulled from Pegasus's thin barriers, channeling energy that this reality provided more freely than Earth's protected dimensions. The crimson bands of Sidorak manifested in amber gold light, mystical constructs that wrapped around the dart's hull and locked in place. The ship strained against magical restraints, engines screaming. Inside, Strange sensed the pilot, a Wraith warrior, wounded and desperate, driven by hunger that had sustained it through crash and burial. It's restrained. McKay stared at the immobilized dart. You're holding it, with magic, that shouldn't be possible. McKay, shut up and shoot it. Shepard aimed for the exposed cockpit, disciplined fire seeking vulnerable points. But Strange felt something that made him hesitate. The Wraith inside was dying, injuries from the crash finally claiming it. The dart wasn't attacking from strategy. It was the last desperate action of a being that knew it was dead and wanted to feed one final time. That didn't make it less dangerous. But it provided opportunity. Everyone stop. Strange commanded with authority that surprised himself. The pilot is dying. If we disable the dart without killing it, we might be able to capture. The settlement elder interrupted with voice that carried across panicked exodus. Do not let it live. The Wraith show no mercy, give them none in return. Taylor moved beside Strange, P-90 raised but not firing. She speaks from experience. The Wraith have culled her people for generations. They are predators who view us as livestock. I understand. Strange maintained the mystical restraints while simultaneously forming plan. But a captured Wraith could provide intelligence. Military tactics, ship weaknesses, biological information. Or it could feed on someone while we're trying to study it. Shepard's tactical assessment was ruthlessly practical. Strange, I appreciate creative thinking, but we're not equipped for prisoner transport in the jumper. The Dart's engine began failing catastrophically, organic technology dying along with its pilot. Strange felt the Wraith's consciousness fading, awareness that combined human intelligence with predatory hunger that had no compassion, no mercy, only need. For a moment, their minds touched through the mystical restraints. Strange saw 10,000 years of systematic predation, civilizations reduced to livestock, the Wraith's complete conviction that this was natural order. But underneath, buried deep, he sensed what the ancients had created, humans modified with Iratus bug DNA, transformed into parasites through genetic manipulation that was never meant to produce sentient life. The ancients' mistake, left to prey on their seeded populations across millennia. The Wraith died. Strange felt its consciousness extinguish like candle flame, hunger finally satisfied by death itself. The Dart crashed back to surface, restrained by magic but no longer threatening. Silence filled the aftermath. Villagers emerged slowly from panic, staring at the disabled ship and the sorcerer who'd held it immobile with light from his hands. The elder approached Strange with expression mixing gratitude and fear. You are powerful, walker between worlds. But power alone will not save us. The Wraith are many, more than all the stars in the sky. One Dart destroyed changes nothing. Strange dismissed the mystical restraints, exhaustion from channeling while already drained from earlier city enhancements making his hands tremble worse than usual. I know. But every Wraith ship destroyed is one less threat. Every culling prevented saves lives. Until they return in greater numbers, angry that we resisted. The Elder's pragmatism was earned through brutal experience. This is how it has always been. The ancestors fled. We remain, hiding and hoping the Wraith forget us long enough to raise another generation for their next feeding. Shepard approached the downed Dart, scanning for salvageable intelligence. Ma'am, would your people be willing to relocate to a world with better defenses? We're cataloging planets that might serve as refugee sites. And abandon our ancestors' graves. The fields we have tended for generations. She shook her head. This is our home, whatever horrors visit it. We will not become refugees fleeing across the ring. Tayla's expression showed understanding born from shared cultural trauma. Then at least accept communication devices. If the Wraith return, you can warn others through the Stargate network. The diplomatic exchange continued while Strange examined the crashed Dart more closely. Organic technology that grew rather than being manufactured, systems that responded to Wraith neural commands the way ancient technology responded to gene activation. The ancients had created their own nemesis through experimentation that valued knowledge above ethical consideration. Getting anything useful? McKay appeared beside him, scanner active despite obvious discomfort near Wraith technology. Biology and technology merged seamlessly. Strange studied where hull breach exposed internal systems. It's elegant in horrifying ways. The Wraith are essentially living weapons, evolution or engineering created apex predators with no natural checks. Except us, apparently. McKay gestured at the disabled ship. You held that thing immobile with, what did you call it? Mystic arts. Which, fine, I'm accepting supernatural power exists now, my worldview is flexible enough to incorporate new data even when it violates everything I thought I knew. Strange smiled slightly. That's very scientific of you. I'm a scientist. We adapt when evidence demands it. McKay's expression turned more serious. But that thing you did, holding an entire spacecraft with magical light constructs, that costs you something. I can see it. Your hands are shaking worse, you're pale, and my bioscanner shows energy depletion patterns that look like extreme physical exhaustion. Magic has prices. Strange steadied his trembling hands with effort. Greater effects require greater energy. I can channel dimensional forces, but doing so strains body and consciousness. There are limits. Which you probably shouldn't be reaching on our first mission together. McKay's concern was genuine beneath sarcastic delivery. Carson will have my head if we bring you back depleted. Can you make it through the gate? Strange nodded, though honestly uncertain. Between enhancing Atlantis's systems, interfacing with ancient technology for hours, and then restraining a wraith dart while already exhausted, he'd pushed closer to his limits than wise. I'll manage. They gathered samples from the crashed dart, biological material, damaged technology components, anything that might provide intelligence advantage. The settlement's gratitude was genuine but haunted by knowledge that this respite was temporary. The wraith would return eventually. They always did. The journey back through the Stargate was worse than the first transit, exhaustion making dimensional compression feel like consciousness fragmenting across light years. Strange barely maintained awareness through the wormhole, the cloak essentially holding him together until they rematerialized in Atlantis's gate room. Beckett was waiting with medical team, having monitored Strange's biosigns remotely. Right, you're coming to the infirmary. Don't argue, your energy readings dropped 40% during that mission, and I need to understand what mystical exhaustion means in medical terms. Strange didn't argue. He let Beckett guide him away while Shepard debriefed with Weir, explaining the downed dart and confirmed wraith activity in Atlantis's vicinity. In the infirmary, Strange lay on a bed while ancient medical scanners analyzed biology that confused every system designed by beings who'd mastered genetics millions of years before human civilization existed. Your cellular structure is remarkable, Beckett muttered, studying impossible readings. You're regenerating energy at rates that should be physiologically impossible. Like your body is drawing power from sources my equipment can't detect. Dimensional sources. Strange's voice came weakly. The mystic arts teach practitioners to recover energy from the ambient dimensional field. It's slower here than Earth, Pegasus's barriers are thinner, already strained. Why are they thinner? Beckett's medical curiosity was relentless. Is it the wraith? Their feeding somehow damages reality itself? Possibly. Strange closed his eyes, feeling Pegasus's scarred dimensional topology. Or the gate network. Millions of wormholes torn through spacetime across millennia might weaken barriers between dimensions. The ancients were brilliant, but they might not have considered long-term metaphysical consequences. Beckett made notes that would require entirely new categories in medical documentation. You need rest. Proper rest, which means no mystical city enhancement or wraith fighting for at least 12 hours. Doctor's orders. Strange smiled faintly. Doctor's orders from one physician to another. Even surgeons need recovery time. Strange drifted toward sleep, exhaustion claiming consciousness with medical efficiency. But as awareness faded, he felt Atlantis's presence, the city's consciousness or sophisticated AI, monitoring him with concern that seemed almost protective. He'd proven himself to the ancients' greatest achievement. And in return, Atlantis had decided he was worth preserving. In dreams, Strange saw the wraith, not the dying pilot from the crashed dart, but the vast hive fleets scattered across the galaxy. Thousands of ships, millions of warriors, all hungry and patient and absolutely certain that Atlantis' awakening changed nothing fundamental. They had fed on this galaxy for 10,000 years. One city, one expedition, and one sorcerer weren't enough to change that ancient pattern. But perhaps, Strange's dreaming mind suggested, they were enough to begin. Strange woke to find McKay sitting beside his infirmary bed, tablet in hand and expression oscillating between fascination and existential crisis. The scientist noticed his awareness immediately. Finally. You've been unconscious for 14 hours, which Carson said was fine but also concerning because your biosigns kept doing things that medical science can't explain, which is basically my life now, accepting impossible things before breakfast. McKay thrust the tablet forward. I need you to look at something. It's important. Possibly revolutionary. Definitely going to require complete reformulation of how we understand ancient technology. Strange pushed himself upright, noting that his hand's tremor had reduced to baseline levels and the mystical exhaustion had faded to manageable fatigue. The cloak draped across a nearby chair shifted slightly, acknowledging his consciousness. "Good morning to you too, Dr. McKay. It's actually late afternoon, you slept through a full day cycle, and we don't have time for pleasantries because I've been comparing ancient database entries on Ascension with your descriptions of mystical training," and McKay paused for breath. "They're the same thing. Not metaphorically. Literally the same theoretical framework approached through different methodologies." Strange took the tablet, scanning data that combined ancient text with McKay's annotated translations. His medical and mystical training made connections that confirmed what he'd suspected since arriving. The ancients understood consciousness as quantum phenomenon. They built technology to manipulate the same forces mystics access through discipline. Exactly. McKay's enthusiasm overrode his usual skepticism. "Look at this entry. It describes preparing candidates for ascension through a neural pathway restructuring to enable dimensional interface." That's essentially what you described your training doing. The mystic arts reshape consciousness to perceive and manipulate extradimensional forces. Ancient technology does the same thing artificially. Strange studied the correlations with growing understanding. Which explains why the city responds to me so strongly. My mystical training created the exact neural architecture the ancients engineered into their gene markers. More than that. McKay pulled up schematics showing brain activity patterns. "I've been comparing your neural scans with records of ancients who successfully ascended. Your consciousness generates nearly identical patterns: dimensional awareness, quantum perception, the ability to interface with reality at fundamental levels." He leaned forward intensely. "You're essentially what the ancients were trying to become through technology. You achieved it through discipline and training." The implications settled around Strange like the cloak's weight. Familiar but significant. "So when I interface with their technology, you're not just using it. You're completing it." McKay's expression showed scientific revelation wrestling with philosophical implications. Ancient technology was designed by beings on the path to transcendence, built to be operated by consciousness capable of perceiving beyond physical limitations. You walked through the gate already possessing what they spent millions of years engineering toward. Beckett appeared with medical scanner, interrupting the theoretical discussion. "Rodney, I specifically said no bothering the patient until he'd had proper recovery time. This is important, Carson. We're discussing fundamental understanding of consciousness and technology. Which can wait until after I verify his energy readings have stabilized." Beckett scanned Strange with professional thoroughness. "How are you feeling? Any lingering exhaustion, disorientation, or mystical side effects I should know about?" Strange assessed himself carefully, medical training and mystical awareness combining for comprehensive evaluation. "Tired but functional. The dimensional energy depletion has recovered mostly. I can channel again if necessary, though I shouldn't push to previous levels for at least another day." "Good. Because Elizabeth wants to debrief about the mission, and Colonel Shepard has been asking when you'll be cleared for another gate trip." Beckett made notes that would require inventing new medical terminology. "You're released, but I want monitoring of your bio-signs during any future mystical activities. We need baseline data on what's normal exhaustion versus dangerous depletion." Strange nodded agreement, then turned back to McKay. "You said this was revolutionary. What specifically?" McKay's expression shifted to barely contained excitement. "If we understand the parallels between mystical training and ancient ascension preparation, we might be able to improve our gene therapy. Instead of just introducing genetic markers, we could develop consciousness training that enhances natural compatibility. You'd be perfect to design the curriculum, teaching expedition members meditation and awareness techniques that mirror mystical disciplines. You want me to train your scientists in mystic arts fundamentals." Strange considered this, recognizing both potential and complications. That could work. The basic disciplines, meditation, consciousness expansion, dimensional awareness, don't require years of study. They'd enhance anyone's ability to interface with ancient technology. We could achieve what the ancients did through gradual enhancement rather than catastrophic forced evolution. Strange stood, the cloak immediately floating across to settle around his shoulders with familiar warmth. Let's discuss it with Dr. Weir. If Atlantis is going to survive long-term, enhancing everyone's capabilities makes tactical sense. They found Weir in her office overlooking the city's towers, reviewing reports with concentration that suggested complicated political calculations. She looked up as they entered, diplomat's masks sliding into place. Dr. Strange. I'm glad you're recovered. We've had developments during your rest period that require discussion. The tone suggested those developments weren't positive. Strange sat across from her while McKay hovered nearby, tablet clutched defensively. The Wraith ships that withdrew. We're pulled up tactical displays showing sensor data. They've returned. Not the same three, we're tracking 7 distinct vessels in nearby star systems. They're conducting what appears to be coordinated reconnaissance, scanning multiple worlds simultaneously. Strange felt cold tactical assessment settle over him. They're mapping your defensive capabilities. The initial 3 ships reported back about Atlantis's awakening and stronger than expected shields. Now they're gathering intelligence before committing to major assault. That's our assessment. Weir's expression showed the weight of leading an expedition facing extinction-level threat. Colonel Shepard estimates we have between 3 days and a week before they commit to siege. When that happens, we'll be facing not 3 ships but dozens, possibly hundreds. And our shields, even enhanced, won't hold against sustained assault from that many vessels. McKay stated the mathematics grimly. We bought time, not victory. Taylor entered without knocking, her warriors bearing radiating urgency. Elizabeth, we have received transmission from several worlds through the Gate network. The Wraith are culling multiple planets simultaneously, aggressive, coordinated attacks unlike their normal patterns. They are demonstrating power, showing human populations across Pegasus what happens when the Ancestors' city awakens. The tactical picture crystallized with ugly clarity. The Wraith weren't just preparing to attack Atlantis, they were sending messages to every human world that resistance was futile, that the Ancients' return meant only increased suffering. How many worlds? Strange asked quietly. For confirmed cullings in the last 12 hours. Taylor's voice carried controlled anger. Thousands of people taken for feeding. Entire settlements emptied. The Wraith are gorging themselves, building strength for the siege. Weir stood, moving to the windows overlooking Atlantis's impossible beauty. We can't protect every world. We don't have the ships, the firepower, or the personnel. The most we can do is survive, hope Earth sends reinforcements, and try to develop better defenses. That's the pragmatic assessment. Shepard's voice came from the doorway, the colonel's tactical mind clearly wrestling with unwinnable scenarios. But it's also giving the Wraith exactly what they want, us locked in this city, defensive, while they demonstrate dominance across the galaxy. Strange processed the situation through strategic frameworks honed during battles against dimensional threats. You need to change the equation. Stop reacting to Wraith actions and force them to react to yours. With what? McKay's frustration erupted. 3 puddle jumpers, a partially powered city, and 1 wizard who nearly collapsed from exhaustion fighting a single dart. We're not equipped for offensive operations against the dominant predatory species in the galaxy. No. But you have something they don't expect. Strange met each person's gaze in turn. Me. A sorcerer interfacing with ancient technology in ways that apparently mirror what the ancients themselves were becoming. The Wraith have been the apex predators here for 10,000 years because nothing has challenged their fundamental assumptions about power and capability. Shepard's expression showed tactical interest despite skepticism. You're suggesting we use you as, what? A secret weapon? That's putting a lot of faith in magic we barely understand. Not just magic. Ancient technology enhanced by mystical understanding. Strange gestured at McKay's tablet still displaying their earlier research. You've been treating the city's systems as tools to use. But they're designed for consciousness integration, operators who can think alongside the technology rather than just commanding it. I can do that naturally because my training prepared me exactly for this kind of interface. We're turned from the windows, diplomat's calculation evident. What specifically are you proposing? Strange had been formulating this since waking, mystical intuition and tactical assessment converging. The ancients built Atlantis with weapons systems you haven't accessed yet, defenses that require higher-level gene interface and consciousness integration than anyone has demonstrated. If I can unlock those systems, you'd have capabilities the Wraith don't know about and can't predict. We've tried accessing the weapons platforms. McKay pulled up schematics showing multiple locked systems. Even Shepard can't activate them consistently. The ancient database suggests they require unified consciousness protocols, whatever that means, which we've interpreted as needing multiple gene carriers working simultaneously. Or one consciousness trained to perceive multiple dimensional layers simultaneously. Strange studied the schematics with growing certainty. Mystical training includes techniques for expanded awareness, perceiving reality from multiple perspectives at once. The ancients probably developed similar capabilities through technology. If I interface with weapons systems while using those techniques, I might be able to provide the unified consciousness the protocols require. Kayla moved closer, her Wraith sense ability making her particularly attuned to predatory threats. If you could unlock weapons that surprise the Wraith, force them to reconsider their assault calculations, that changes the strategic picture. They respect strength and respond to costs that exceed expected gains. It's also incredibly risky. Beckett had followed them from the infirmary, medical concern overriding protocol. Stephen, you nearly depleted yourself completely yesterday. Now you're proposing interfacing with ancient weapons systems that might require even more energy expenditure. What happens if you overextend? Strange met the physician's worried gaze with honesty. Then I collapse again, and Carson gets more impossible biosigns to document. But if we don't try, you're facing siege by overwhelming force with defensive capabilities you already know aren't sufficient. Silence filled the office while everyone processed implications. Weir's diplomatic training was evident in how she weighed risks against potential gains, leadership responsibility heavy in her expression. Rodney, assessment. If Dr. Strange can unlock these weapons systems, what kind of defensive improvement are we talking about? McKay consulted data with frantic energy. The ancient database mentions drone weapons, self-guided projectiles that can target multiple ships simultaneously. If we had access to full drone deployment, we could theoretically engage dozens of Wraith vessels before they reached firing range. That doesn't guarantee victory, but it changes the probability significantly. And the risks? Weir's question was directed at Strange. He considered lying, then rejected the impulse. Consciousness integration with weapons systems designed for beings approaching ascension could have unpredictable effects. Best case, I unlock the platforms and we gain significant defensive capability. Worst case, the integration overwhelms my mental architecture and I suffer the ego dissolution the ancients warned about with their forced ascension device. That's unacceptable. Beckett's medical ethics wouldn't compromise. We're not risking your sanity for weapons that might work. With respect, Carson, Strange kept his tone gentle but firm. This is exactly what I was trained for. The mystic arts prepare sorcerers to face consciousness-threatening situations while maintaining mental integrity. If anyone on this expedition can safely attempt this integration, it's me. Shepard stepped forward with military pragmatism. How do we test it? I'm not authorizing full weapons platform activation without knowing you can handle the interface. Start small. Strange had already planned the progression. Give me access to one drone launcher. Let me try interfacing while Rodney monitors both my biosigns and the city's systems. If it works without catastrophic effects, we scale up gradually. Weir made her decision with visible reluctance. We try it. Controlled environment, full medical monitoring, and the moment Carson or Rodney sees dangerous readings, we shut it down. Agreed? Strange nodded. Agreed. They gathered in the ancient weapons control room. A chamber deep within Atlantis's core where crystalline interfaces managed defensive systems the expedition had barely accessed. Strange stood before the main console while McKay set up monitoring equipment and Beckett prepared medical intervention protocols. Shepard remained armed and ready, his tactical assessment clear. If Strange's consciousness started fragmenting, he'd need to be contained quickly. The drone launcher is minimal activation. McKay verified settings nervously. One weapon platform, manually targeted, requiring basic gene interface. If you can make it respond consistently, we'll know the integration is working. Strange placed his hands on the ancient control surface, feeling it recognize him with eager responsiveness. Then he opened his mystical awareness, the expanded consciousness techniques the Ancient One had taught through years of meditation and discipline. His perception shifted, fragmenting into multiple simultaneous viewpoints. He saw the control room through physical eyes, the city's energy network through mystical senses, and the weapons systems through ancient technology interface. Three perspectives that normally would overwhelm human consciousness, maintained through training that prepared for exactly this kind of cognitive stress. The weapons platform activated. Not hesitantly, but smoothly. Ancient technology recognizing consciousness that could perceive as its builders had perceived, think across dimensional layers the way ascended beings thought. It's working. McKay's voice came from multiple distances simultaneously as Strange fragmented awareness processed input. Drone launcher is online, targeting protocols active, and amazement colored his tone. You're accessing secondary systems I didn't know existed. Weapons platforms throughout the city are acknowledging your interface. Strange felt Atlantis's full defensive capability revealing itself. Hundreds of drone launchers, energy weapons the ancients had installed against threats that terrified beings who'd conquered galaxies. All responding to consciousness that bridged mystical discipline and ancient engineering. How many platforms can you control? Shepard's tactical interest was evident even through dimensional perception fragmentation. Strange assessed carefully, feeling the load on his consciousness like weight distributed across mystically enhanced neural pathways. 12 simultaneously at current integration level. More if I push deeper, but, he felt the warning clearly. Past 20, I'd be approaching the threshold where consciousness starts losing coherence. 12 is plenty. Weir's relief was palpable. That's more simultaneous weapons control than any of us have achieved. Strange carefully withdrew from the interface, his consciousness reassembling into singular awareness with disorienting suddenness. The cloak steadied him as vertigo threatened, mystical fabric apparently concerned by its master's cognitive fragmenting. I'm fine, he assured everyone, though Beckett's scanner was already cataloging concerning readings. The integration works. With practice, I can probably increase the number of platforms I control simultaneously without mental strain. But you shouldn't have to. McKay was already formulating plans, his brilliant mind racing ahead. If we understand how you're achieving unified consciousness, we can develop training protocols for others. Colonel Shepard's gene expression is strong enough that with proper meditation techniques, he might achieve similar results. Shepard looked distinctly uncomfortable. You want me to learn wizard meditation to control ancient weapons? I want you to learn consciousness expansion techniques that happen to correlate with mystical disciplines, McKay corrected. It's science that looks like magic, which is different from magic that looks like science, although honestly at this point the distinction is philosophical rather than practical. Rodney. Weir's interruption was gentle but firm. Can this work? Can we train our gene carriers to interface more effectively with the city's weapons? Strange nodded, confidence growing. Basic meditation and awareness expansion can be taught in days, not years. It won't give them mystical abilities, but it will enhance their consciousness's capacity for multidimensional perception. Combined with gene therapy, that should improve everyone's ancient technology interface significantly. Then that's our strategy. Weir's leadership decisiveness cut through uncertainty. Doctor Strange teaches consciousness enhancement. We unlock as many weapons systems as possible. And when the Wraith come expecting an easy siege, they discover Atlantis has capabilities they didn't anticipate. It buys time, Shepard added pragmatically. Forces them to recalculate, maybe withdraw to gather more intelligence. Every day we survive is another day for Earth to send reinforcements or for us to develop better defenses. Taylor smiled with fierce satisfaction. And every Wraith ship we destroy sends messages to human populations that the Ancestors' city is not defenseless. Hope has been rare in Pegasus for 10,000 years. Perhaps it is time hope returned. Strange felt the weight of their expectations and the enormity of teaching mystical fundamentals to scientists and soldiers who'd built careers on rational thought. But the Ancient One had always said the mystic arts chose their students through need rather than desire. Atlantis needed sorcerers' knowledge merged with ancient technology. And Strange had been pulled across dimensional barriers at precisely the moment that need was greatest. Outside the weapons control room, the city hummed with enhanced power efficiency and newly awakened defensive systems. The Wraith were gathering for siege, confident in 10,000 years of dominance. They were about to discover that the Ancients' greatest city had awakened something its builders might not have fully understood, the convergence of mystical discipline with technology designed for consciousness on the threshold of transcendence. And that convergence was preparing to teach predators that prey sometimes evolve teeth sharp enough to bite back. The training began at dawn, if Atlantis's artificial day cycle could be called dawn. Strange stood in one of the city's meditation chambers, a space the Ancients had apparently designed for consciousness preparation before attempting dangerous technology interfaces. Crystalline walls pulsed with soft bioluminescence, and the room's geometry somehow enhanced mental focus in ways his mystical senses recognized as deliberate architecture. 12 expedition members sat in arranged semicircle before him, Shepard, Ford, several Marines, 3 scientists with moderate gene expression, and surprisingly, McKay, who looked deeply uncomfortable with the entire concept. "I feel ridiculous," McKay muttered. "I'm a physicist, not a monk. Meditation is what people do when they've given up on rational problem solving. Meditation is rational problem solving applied to consciousness itself." Strange kept his tone patient, remembering his own skepticism before Kamar-Taj. "You've accepted that ancient technology interfaces with minds. This teaches you to control that interface more effectively." Taylor sat among the students despite not possessing the ancient gene, her warrior's discipline recognizing value in mental training regardless of genetic compatibility. "My people have practiced focused awareness for generations. It helps us sense the Wraith before they strike. Perhaps there are connections we have not recognized." Strange nodded appreciation for her insight. The mystic arts draw on techniques developed across countless cultures: meditation, visualization, consciousness expansion. The ancients apparently pursued similar practices through scientific frameworks. What I'm teaching you are fundamentals that bridge both approaches. Shepard sat with military readiness, clearly approaching this as tactical training. "How long until we see results?" "The Wraith aren't going to wait for us to achieve enlightenment. Basic techniques show effect within hours." Strange began the first exercise, one the Ancient One had taught him in his earliest desperate days at Kamar-Taj. "Close your eyes. Focus on your breathing, not controlling it, just observing. 4 counts in, 4 counts out. Let thoughts pass without engaging them. That's it." Ford sounded disappointed. "We just breathe." "You'd be surprised how difficult just breathing becomes when you actually try." Strange demonstrated, his own practice refined through years but never perfected. The tremor in his hands served as constant reminder that control was illusion. The mind wants to wander, to solve problems, to engage with every stray thought. Teaching it stillness is the foundation of everything else. They attempted it. Within 30 seconds, McKay was fidgeting. Within a minute, two Marines were clearly thinking about tactical scenarios rather than focusing on breath. But Shepard and Taylor showed natural aptitude, the Colonel's military discipline and Taylor's cultural training providing frameworks that mystical practice built upon. Good. Strange walked among them, his mystical perception reading their consciousness states. Now, while maintaining breath focus, expand your awareness. Don't look with your eyes, sense the room around you. The walls, the floor, the people beside you. Let your consciousness extend beyond your body's boundaries. This was harder. Consciousness naturally contracted to physical sensation, ego boundaries reinforced through lifetime of separation between self and environment. Breaking that conditioning required either years of practice or natural talent for perceiving beyond conventional limits. Taylor's eyes snapped open with startled recognition. I feel the others. Their presence, but more than just physical proximity. Like I can sense their thoughts' shapes without hearing them. Exactly. Strange felt satisfaction at her rapid progress. You're perceiving consciousness fields rather than just physical bodies. The ancients built technology that interfaces with these fields. The gene activation is just biological compatibility. True mastery comes from learning to consciously control what your genetics make possible. Shepard's expression showed concentration as he extended awareness. Strange watched through mystical perception as the Colonel's consciousness reached toward Atlantis' systems. Gene interface activating naturally when combined with expanded awareness training. Around him, ancient technology began responding with increased sensitivity. Colonel, open your eyes but maintain that expanded state. Strange gestured at the crystalline walls now glowing brighter in Shepard's vicinity. The city is responding to your heightened consciousness. This is what unified awareness looks like. You're not just using ancient technology, you're thinking alongside it. Shepard's tactical mind processed this immediately. So when I'm piloting a jumper, if I maintain this awareness state, the interface becomes more intuitive? Precisely. The jumper reads your intent more clearly because your consciousness is broadcasting more distinctly. Strange demonstrated by extending his own awareness, feeling Atlantis respond throughout the chamber, lights brightening, systems activating in sympathetic resonance. The ancients designed their technology for operators whose consciousness could extend beyond ego boundaries. You're learning to meet that design halfway. McKay opened one eye, scanner held despite instructions to focus internally. This is, actually showing measurable results. Your neural activity patterns just shifted into configurations that correlate with enhanced ancient gene response. I'm documenting everything because this is publishable if we survive long enough to write papers. Rodney, scanner down, eyes closed, focus on breathing. Strange's tone remained patient despite McKay's resistance. You can analyze after you experience. They continued for 2 hours, basic breath work, consciousness expansion, learning to maintain awareness while technology responded. By session's end, every gene carrier showed measurably improved interface sensitivity. Even McKay had achieved moments of expanded awareness between skeptical analysis. Tomorrow, we advance to visualization techniques. Strange dismissed the group while noting who showed natural aptitude. Shepard, Taylor, Ford. You three demonstrated strong progress. I want to work with you separately on weapons interface training. After others departed, those three remained. Shepard stood with military readiness despite meditation session, his tactical mind clearly already applying lessons to combat scenarios. When the Wraith come, you'll need me controlling as many weapons platforms as possible, Shepard stated. How fast can you get me to your level of consciousness fragmentation? Strange appreciated his directness. Not to my level, that requires years of mystical training. But I can teach you to control 6 to 8 platforms simultaneously within 3 days of intensive practice. Combined with my 12, we'd have significant defensive coverage. And me? Ford's youth showed an eager competitiveness. I've got strong gene expression. Beckett said my compatibility tests were top 10%. You'd focus on jumper piloting with enhanced interface. Strange had already assessed Ford's capabilities. With proper training, you could achieve precision control that makes the jumper respond like extension of your body rather than vehicle you're commanding. Taylor observed quietly, then asked the question Strange had anticipated. I do not possess the ancient gene. Yet I benefited from this training. Why? Because consciousness expansion has value beyond ancient technology. Strange met her thoughtful gaze. Your people's ability to sense wraith proximity suggests latent psychic sensitivity. These techniques would enhance that, possibly let you detect wraith at greater distances or with more precision. Her expression showed interest mixed with ancient wariness. The wraith are in my blood, ancestors who were taken as prey, genetic memory of their feeding. If I could turn that violation into weapon against them. Then we train you separately as well. Strange felt certain this wasn't coincidence. Taylor's presence on Atlantis, her unique sensitivity, his arrival teaching techniques that enhanced exactly her capabilities. The universe or the ancients or something was arranging pieces on a board whose full pattern remained obscured. They spent the afternoon in intensive individual training. Shepard learned to fragment his awareness across multiple weapons platforms, his military discipline providing framework for maintaining tactical focus while consciousness split. Ford practiced jumper interface until the small spacecraft responded to thought before conscious command. Taylor explored her wraith sense, discovering through expanded awareness that she could perceive their hunger across light years, a horrifying gift that made her valuable sensor system. Strange pushed himself harder than Wise, demonstrating techniques while simultaneously monitoring students and maintaining his own mystical reserves. By evening, exhaustion threatened again, but they'd made remarkable progress. Beckett intercepted him returning to quarters, medical scanner raised accusingly. You're depleted. Again. I specifically said you needed rest between major mystical exertions. I rested 14 hours, Strange pointed out. And this was teaching, not direct channeling. Teaching that fragments your consciousness across multiple awareness states for hours. Beckett's readings showed concerning patterns. Stephen, I understand the urgency. I truly do. But if you collapse during the Wraith assault because you've pushed yourself beyond recovery capacity, you're not helping anyone. Strange stopped, recognizing truth in the physician's concern. You're right. I'll moderate tomorrow's training sessions. Good. Because Elizabeth wants you at a strategic briefing in 20 minutes, and you need to be mentally sharp, not running on fumes and stubbornness. Beckett's stern expression softened slightly. We're all impressed by what you're accomplishing. Just don't kill yourself doing it. The briefing gathered Atlantis' leadership in the conference room where tactical displays showed updated Wraith movements. Weir's expression was grave as Strange entered, Shepard already present along with McKay, Taylor, and several senior military personnel. We've had a development. We're activated the central display, showing sensor data from long-range scanning. The Wraith aren't just conducting reconnaissance anymore. They're gathering. We've identified 47 distinct vessels converging on this region of space. Intelligence suggests they're preparing coordinated assault within 48 hours. The number settled like cold weight. 47 ships. Even with enhanced defenses and Strange weapons platform control, those odds were catastrophic. They're committing significant resources. Shepard studied fleet disposition with tactical expertise. This isn't just siege, it's demonstration. They want every human world watching through whatever intelligence networks exist to see what happens when someone defies Wraith dominance. Can we survive that many ships? Weir's question was directed at Strange and Shepard both. Strange calculated honestly, mystical intuition and tactical assessment converging. If we fight defensively, maintaining shields while I control 12 drone platforms and Shepard controls 6. We might destroy 20 vessels before they overwhelm us. Maybe 30 if we're lucky and they're overconfident. But 47? He shook his head. The mathematics don't favor survival. Then we changed the mathematics. McKay had that expression he got when theoretical breakthrough was imminent. We've been thinking defensively, protecting the city, waiting for them to attack. But the Wraith expect that. They've spent 10,000 years facing prey that hides and hopes not to be noticed. What are you suggesting? Weir's diplomatic instincts sense direction. We take the fight to them. Launch jumpers with enhanced weapons control before they reach attack range. Force them to engage in space rather than at our shields. Use Strange's mystical abilities offensively rather than just enhancing city defenses. McKay pulled up tactical simulations. If we can destroy 10 to 15 ships before they close, survivors might recalculate whether Atlantis is worth the cost. Shepard leaned forward, military mind engaging with the aggressive strategy. It's risky. We'd be exposing our jumpers outside the city's protective shields. But Rodney's right, hitting them before they expect resistance changes their tactical assumptions. I can enhance jumper weapon systems the way I enhanced city shields. Strange felt possibility crystallizing. Channel dimensional energy through their drone launchers, increase firing rate and accuracy. With Ford piloting one jumper and Shepard another, both using expanded awareness training. We could engage multiple targets simultaneously while evading counterfire. Shepard's tactical enthusiasm was building. Standard Wraith tactics assume human ships have limited capability and predictable behavior. Enhanced jumpers piloted by gene carriers using mystical consciousness techniques would violate every assumption they've developed. Teyla stood, warrior's fire in her expression. I should accompany you. My Wraith sense could provide tactical warning of their movements. Can you maintain expanded awareness and provide navigation simultaneously? Strange asked, genuinely uncertain of her capabilities' limits. The Athosians have survived 10,000 years by learning to sense Wraith while functioning normally. Your training has enhanced something we already possess. Her certainty was absolute. I can guide you through their formations while sensing their tactical intentions. Weir processed the proposal with visible reluctance. Diplomat trained for negotiation facing military necessity. This puts our most valuable assets at maximum risk. If we lose Strange, Shepard, and Ford in space combat, Atlantis's defensive capabilities drop catastrophically. If we wait for them to assault the city, we lose anyway. Shepard's military pragmatism was ruthless. This gives us a chance. Small chance, but chance nonetheless. Strange felt the weight of decision crystallizing. He'd been pulled across dimensions to this moment. Sorcerer meeting Ancient City meeting Wraith threat in convergence that demanded choices with consequences rippling across galaxies. I'm willing to try, he said quietly. The mystic arts prepare sorcerers for exactly these situations, impossible odds requiring consciousness pushed beyond normal limits. If there's any chance of making the Wraith reconsider this assault, it's worth the risk. Weir studied each face, seeing determination despite rational fear. Then she made the decision that leadership required. We launch in 36 hours. That gives you time to rest, she looked pointedly at Strange. Properly rest, and for final preparations. Colonel Shepard, coordinate with Dr. McKay on jumper enhancements. Teyla, work with Dr. Strange on integrating your Wraith sense with tactical awareness. And everyone, her voice carried weight of command and compassion both. Understand that this is our best chance. Possibly our only chance. Make it count. The briefing dissolved into tactical planning. Strange found himself beside Shepard reviewing jumper capabilities, discussing how mystical enhancement could boost ancient weapons beyond design specifications. You know this is probably suicide, Shepard said conversationally, studying schematics with professional detachment. 3 jumpers against 47 Wraith vessels. Even with magic wizard powers and consciousness expansion, the mathematics are terrible. I've fought worse odds. Strange thought of Dormammu, of bargaining with entity that could devour dimensions. Though usually I had the time stone and more backup. Time stone. Shepard's curiosity was evident despite tactical focus. Mystical artifact that controlled time itself. I used it to trap a cosmic thread in temporal loop until it gave up trying to destroy Earth. Strange smiled slightly at the memory. Compared to that, 47 Wraith ships is merely extremely dangerous rather than cosmically apocalyptic. Shepard laughed, genuine amusement despite circumstances. You're either incredibly brave or completely insane. I haven't decided which. Can't it be both? Strange met his gaze with understanding earned through shared experience of facing impossible threats. You flew through the Stargate to another galaxy knowing you might never return home. That's either bravery or insanity too. Definitely both. Shepard's expression showed respect beneath military professionalism. Alright, wizard. Let's figure out how to make 3 ancient puddle jumpers punch significantly above their weight class. They worked late into Atlantis' artificial night, planning assault that violated every principle of cautious defense. McKay contributed technical expertise, calculating optimal drone enhancement ratios. Teyla meditated nearby, expanding her wraith sense across increasingly vast distances until she could perceive the gathering fleet's hunger like distant predatory chorus. Strange felt exhaustion accumulating but pushed through, knowing the next 36 hours would determine whether Atlantis survived or became another cautionary tale about defying the Pegasus Galaxy's apex predators. Outside the planning room's windows, Atlantis' towers reached toward alien stars. The city hummed with power Strange had helped optimize, weapon systems he'd unlocked, consciousness integration he'd taught. Ancient technology and mystical discipline converging toward confrontation that would test whether 10,000 years of Wraith dominance could be challenged by one city, one expedition, and one sorcerer who'd stumbled across dimensional barriers at precisely the moment impossible things needed to happen. Beckett appeared eventually, medical bag in hand and stern expression that brooked no argument. Right, that's enough. You're all going to rest properly or I'm sedating everyone. Doctor's orders, and I'll have the Marines enforce them if necessary. Strange started to protest, then recognized wisdom in forced recovery. The mystic arts taught that rest was preparation, that consciousness required recovery as much as muscles needed healing. 8 hours, he negotiated. Then we finalize plans. 8 hours of actual sleep, not meditation or mystical consciousness expansion or whatever else you wizards do instead of proper rest. Beckett's tone was firm. The Wraith are coming regardless. You'll face them better rested than exhausted. Strange nodded acceptance. The cloak guided him toward quarters, its sentient fabric apparently agreeing with the physician's assessment. Tomorrow would bring final preparations. The day after, they would launch into space against overwhelming odds. But tonight, Atlantis slept. Ancient city dreaming of builders who transcended physical limitation, sheltering humans who'd learned to bridge mystical discipline with technological transcendence. And in that shelter, a sorcerer rested, preparing for battle that would teach predators that prey sometimes evolved in unexpected directions. The Wraith were gathering. But so was something they'd never encountered in 10,000 years of dominating this galaxy, consciousness that refused to accept their supremacy as inevitable. Strange stood in Atlantis' jumper bay 34 hours later, watching final preparations with mystical perception extended across dimensional layers. 3 ancient puddle jumpers sat ready, sleek organic technology that blurred distinctions between spacecraft and living systems. McKay moved between them frantically, making final adjustments while muttering calculations that bordered on prayer. Drone weapons enhanced by 43% through dimensional energy channeling, McKay reported without looking up. Shields reinforced with the same mystical frequency optimization you applied to the city. Power consumption reduced, maneuverability improved through consciousness interface strengthening. These jumpers are operating beyond ancient design specifications, which should be impossible, but apparently impossible is just what we call things before wizards show up and break physics. Strange smiled slightly at McKay's frantic brilliance, then turned to where Shepard conducted final weapons checks with military thoroughness. The colonel had spent the intervening hours in intensive consciousness training, learning to maintain expanded awareness while performing complex tactical operations. His gene expression showed measurably enhanced response, meditation combining with natural ability to achieve interface levels the ancients had intended. "How are you feeling?" Strange asked. Shepard looked up from P-90 inspection. "Like I'm about to fly into space against impossible odds with mystical enhancements I barely understand. So pretty much standard operating procedure for Atlantis." His tone carried humor despite tension. "The consciousness fragmentation technique you taught, maintaining awareness across multiple weapons platforms while piloting, it's counterintuitive but effective. I can feel 6 drone systems simultaneously now without losing focus on navigation. That's impressive progress for 2 days training." Strange meant it genuinely. Most mystic apprentices take months to achieve that level of awareness splitting. Most mystic apprentices probably aren't fighter pilots with military discipline training. Shepard holstered his weapon with practiced efficiency. "I've spent years learning to track multiple threats simultaneously while performing high-stress maneuvers. Your techniques just gave me framework to apply that training to consciousness itself." Ford approached from the third jumper, his youth and enthusiasm barely contained despite circumstances. "All systems green. I've been practicing the enhanced interface, the jumper responds before I finish thinking commands now. It's like flying becomes extension of intention rather than vehicle operation." Tayla emerged from meditation chamber adjacent to the bay, her expression showing focused calm that reminded Strange of masters at Kamartaj preparing for dimensional threats. "I can sense them. 47 vessels, converging from multiple vectors. Their hunger is," she paused, searching for description, "coordinated. Like hive mind focused on singular purpose. They intend to make example of Atlantis. Then we give them an example they weren't expecting." Weir descended the stairs with Beckett beside her, the physician carrying medical kit despite knowing he'd be staying behind. "Final status check. Dr. McKay. Jumpers enhanced beyond reasonable specifications. If we survive, I'm writing 17 papers about consciousness-enhanced ancient technology." McKay's nervous energy was palpable. "If we don't survive, someone else will have to figure out how wizards and ancient engineering combine because I'm not explaining it from beyond the grave." "Medical status?" Weir turned to Beckett. The physician scanned Strange with evident concern. "He's still showing energy depletion patterns from previous exertions. Ideally, he'd rest another week before attempting this." Practically, Beckett met Strange's gaze with physician's resignation to patient choices. "He's functional but operating closer to limits than I'd prefer. The mystical enhancement he'll be channeling during combat will push him further. There's real risk of catastrophic exhaustion." "Understood and accepted." Strange kept his tone firm despite knowing Beckett's assessment was accurate. "The Wraith won't wait for optimal recovery periods." Weir studied each team member in turn, sorcerer, colonel, lieutenant, and warrior from culture that had survived Wraith predation through 10,000 years of adaptation. "This is voluntary. Anyone who wants to withdraw, no judgment." "The odds are terrible," Shepard interrupted. "We know. We're going anyway because someone has to, and we're the ones best equipped to make the Wraith reconsider their assault calculations." Then Weir's diplomatic composure cracked slightly, showing the weight of sending people into probable death. "Be careful. Come back. Atlantis needs you. Earth needs you. And personally, I'd rather not lose people I've come to respect after only knowing them such a short time." Strange felt unexpected emotion at her words. He'd arrived accidentally, stumbled into situation through dimensional convergence he still didn't fully understand. But these people had accepted him, trusted him, integrated him into their desperate survival efforts. The expedition had become something like the Fellowship at Kamar-Taj, disparate individuals united by shared purpose against impossible threats. "We'll come back." Strange made the promise despite uncertainty. "Or we'll make the Wraith regret their confidence." Either way, they're about to discover that ancient technology in the hands of consciousness trained beyond their expectations is not prey they're accustomed to hunting. They boarded their jumpers, Shepard and Teyla in Jumper 1, Ford Solo in Jumper 2, Strange in Jumper 3. The cloak settled around him as he took the pilot's seat, ancient technology recognizing him with eager responsiveness. The jumper's systems integrated with his consciousness smoothly, enhanced by McKay's modifications and Strange's own mystical attunement. Through expanded awareness, Strange felt the other jumpers. Shepard's tactical focus, Ford's aggressive energy, Teyla's mystical wraith sense reaching across impossible distances. They were unified without formal connection, consciousness expanded through training that bridged mystical discipline and ancient engineering. Jumper Bay depressurizing, McKay's voice came through communication systems. Gate activation in 30 seconds. Destination coordinates locked for deep space insertion point 15 light-years from Atlantis. That puts you between the city and the approaching Wraith fleet. Strange felt the bay's atmosphere cycling, force fields maintaining breathable environment around jumpers while external pressure dropped. The Stargate activated, chevrons locking in familiar sequence, event horizon establishing vertical portal to coordinates across impossible distance. All jumpers, weapon systems online. Shepard's command voice carried calm authority. "Strange, you're our primary offensive capability. Ford and I provide support and tactical maneuvers. Teyla navigates using Wraith Sense to anticipate their movements. We hit fast, destroy as many as possible before they adapt, then withdraw through the gate before they can coordinate response." Understood. Strange channeled mystical energy carefully, feeling dimensional forces flow through his consciousness into jumper systems McKay had prepared to receive enhancement. The weapons, ancient drones designed for precision targeting, began resonating with frequencies that transcended their original specifications. "Gate is clear," McKay announced. "Launching in 3, 2, 1. The jumpers accelerated toward the event horizon simultaneously. Strange experienced gate travels dimensional compression with slightly less disorientation than before, consciousness expansion training providing framework for navigating the wormhole's reality-bending transit. His awareness fragmented across spatial compression, experienced reconstitution at destination coordinates, and reassembled with only moderate vertigo. They emerged into deep space between stars, void so absolute it made Earth's darkness seem bright by comparison. Pegasus galaxies spread around them in configurations alien eyes had witnessed for 10,000 years of predation. And approaching from multiple vectors, sensor readings confirmed what Teyla's mystical perception already knew. The Wraith Fleet. 47 vessels, organic technology that looked grown rather than built, their hulls pulsing with biological processes that made Strange's mystical senses recoil. Each ship radiated hunger, not metaphorical but literal, predatory essence refined across millennia into species-level imperative. Target acquisition. Shepard's tactical systems lit up with hostile designations. Nearest vessels are 12 light-minutes out. They're detecting us now, formation shifting to intercept posture. Strange extended his consciousness across the jumper's weapons systems, then beyond, reaching toward the dimensional energy sources mystical training had taught him to access. Power flowed through scarred hands into ancient technology, enhancing drone weapons until they glowed with amber light that shouldn't exist in physics understanding. Engaging mystical enhancement now. Strange felt the strain immediately. Channeling dimensional forces while maintaining expanded awareness across multiple weapons platforms while processing jumper systems. His consciousness fragmented in ways that would shatter untrained minds, held together only by years of mystical discipline. Drone systems enhanced. Ready to engage on your command. Ford, take high vector. Strange, maintain central position. I'll sweep low. Taylor, Shepard's voice carried absolute confidence. Guide us through their formation. Show us where they're vulnerable. They are converging, Taylor reported, her wraith sense perceiving tactical intentions before sensors could confirm. 3 ships breaking formation to engage directly. They believe we are scouting expedition, not threat. Their arrogance makes them careless. Then let's teach them better. Shepard's jumper accelerated with enhanced responsiveness, consciousness interface allowing maneuvers that violated standard piloting parameters. All ships, engage. The battle began with ancient violence, human technology meeting wraith bioweapons in void where 10,000 years of predator dominance had never been seriously challenged. Strange released the first drone volley, mystically enhanced weapons screaming through space at velocities exceeding design specifications. They struck the nearest wraith vessel's hull with devastating precision, penetrating organic armor and detonating deep within ship's biological systems. The vessel shuddered, wounded but not destroyed. Then the second volley hit, and the third, Strange controlling 12 simultaneous drone platforms with consciousness fragmented across dimensional layers. Each weapon tracked independent targets, calculating trajectories through mystical intuition that bypassed conventional computing. The Wraith ship exploded in cascade of organic failure, its death visible across light minutes as atmosphere vented and biological systems catastrophically collapsed. First kill confirmed. Ford's enthusiasm crackled through communications. 2 more ships closing, engaging. Strange felt rather than saw Ford's jumper dancing through space with enhanced agility, the young pilot's consciousness integration making maneuvers that should require seconds of calculation instantaneous. His drone weapons, enhanced by Strange's mystical channeling, carved through Wraith formation with unexpected effectiveness. Shepard's tactical genius manifested as systematic target elimination. He'd identified the fleet's coordination ships. Vessels broadcasting command signals to organize assault vectors. His drones, controlled with consciousness expanded across 6 simultaneous platforms, struck with surgical precision. 2 command ships exploded before the Wraith recognized the threat level they faced. They're adapting, Taylor warned, her Wraith sense perceiving tactical shift. Fleet dispersing into hunting formations. They realize we are more dangerous than anticipated. The Wraith response was immediate and terrifying. 44 remaining ships spreading across 3-dimensional space in patterns refined through 10,000 years of warfare. They stopped treating the jumpers as prey and began engaging them as threats. Energy weapons lit the void, Wraith organic technology firing concentrated pulses that made Strange's mystical senses scream warning. The jumper's shields absorbed impacts with enhanced resilience, McKay's modifications and Strange's mystical reinforcement providing protection beyond ancient design specifications. But there were so many ships. For every Wraith vessel Strange destroyed, 3 more converged on his position. His consciousness fragmented further, splitting awareness across defensive shielding, offensive weapons control, piloting maneuvers, and maintaining mystical energy channeling simultaneously. The strain was enormous. Strange felt his mental architecture beginning to protest. Human consciousness wasn't designed for this many simultaneous complex operations, even with mystical training. But he pushed harder, knowing retreat meant Atlantis faced the full fleet without having reduced their numbers. 6 ships down. Shepard reported, his tactical efficiency evident in precise targeting. But they're boxing us in. Ford, break left and regroup. I can't. Ford's voice carried alarm. 3 ships closing fast, I'm. Strange redirected consciousness instantly, channeling defensive enhancement through dimensional space toward Ford's jumper. Shields brightened with amber light as mystical reinforcement reached across impossible distance. Wraith weapons struck enhanced barriers and dissipated, giving Ford seconds to execute evasive maneuver. Thanks. Ford's relief was palpable. These things are fast when they're actually trying. They are afraid. Taylor's observation carried satisfaction. We have destroyed 7 vessels. They expected easy victory and found resistance that costs them. Their hunger mixes with uncertainty now. Strange destroyed an 8th ship, then a 9th, consciousness fragmenting dangerously as he maintained attack patterns across multiple simultaneous threats. His mystical reserves were depleting rapidly, channeling dimensional energy while controlling ancient weapons while reinforcing shields pushing him toward limits Beckett had warned about. Strange, status. Shepard's tactical awareness included monitoring team condition. Functional but approaching exhaustion threshold. Strange forced honesty despite wanting to claim unlimited capacity. I can maintain current enhancement for maybe 10 more minutes before catastrophic depletion. Then we make them count. Shepard adjusted formation, his tactical genius calculating maximum damage before withdrawal. Taylor, identify their command structure. We take out leadership, force the rest to reorganize, buy Atlantis more preparation time. There. Taylor's wraith sense locked onto specific vessel radiating greater hunger than others. That ship coordinates the fleet. Its queen commands this assault. If she falls, they will withdraw to select new leadership. Strange felt it too, one vessel pulsing with predatory consciousness that dominated the fleet's collective hunger. The Queen's ship was larger, more heavily armed, positioned at formation center where defenders would have to penetrate multiple protective layers to reach it. We go through them, Shepard decided with military ruthlessness. All jumpers, maximum enhancement. Strange, give us everything you've got left. We're making run at their command ship. Strange channeled deeper than wise, drawing on dimensional sources with abandon that would horrify the Ancient One. Power flooded through consciousness already fragmented dangerously, mystical energy pouring into 3 jumpers' weapons and shields until ancient technology glowed with forces its builders had never imagined. They accelerated toward the fleet center. 3 small craft against dozens of wraith vessels, enhanced beyond reason by mystical discipline merged with ancient engineering. It was insane, tactically suicidal, and absolutely necessary. The wraith responded with full defensive commitment. Energy weapons created lattice of fire that should have been impossible to navigate. But Taylor's wraith sense perceived their targeting patterns before they fired, guiding jumpers through gaps in coverage with mystical precision. Shepard and Ford piloted with enhanced consciousness, making them extensions of their craft rather than operators. And Strange unleashed everything, 12 drone platforms firing simultaneously with mystical enhancement multiplying their destructive capacity. Wraith ships exploded in sequence as they tried blocking the attack run, organic hulls unable to withstand weapons that operated on principles bridging physics and metaphysics. They reached the Queen ship. Up close, it was massive, organic cathedral of predatory hunger, pulsing with biological systems that had fed on countless humans across 10,000 years. Strange felt the Queen's consciousness inside, ancient, intelligent, absolutely convinced of wraith supremacy. He directed every remaining drone at the vessel's core, channeling dimensional energy until the weapons burned with light that shouldn't exist in normal space. The drone struck hull, penetrated deep, and detonated with mystically enhanced fury. The Queen ship convulsed. Strange felt the Queen herself die, consciousness extinguishing as her vessel's biological systems catastrophically failed. The explosion was visible across light minutes, command ship fragmenting into debris that drifted through void bearing testament to challenged dominance. Queen ship destroyed. Ford's voice carried disbelieving triumph. We actually withdraw now. Shepard commanded as remaining Wraith fleet began coordinating despite leadership loss. Strange, gate coordinates. Strange tried responding but consciousness wouldn't cooperate. He'd pushed too far, fragmented too deeply, channeled too much dimensional energy through neural pathways already strained. The mystical discipline holding his awareness together began failing. The jumper system started fluctuating as his consciousness lost coherent control. Shields wavered. Weapons stopped responding. Even basic piloting became difficult as Strange's awareness collapsed toward singular focus, just maintaining bodily functions. Strange is going down. Taylor's alarm carried across communications. His consciousness, I can feel it fragmenting. Darkness edged Strange's vision. The last thing he perceived was the cloak wrapping around him protectively as mystical exhaustion finally claimed consciousness, pushed beyond sustainable limits. And 3 jumpers fled through activated Stargate, while behind them, 38 surviving Wraith vessels held position, predators forced to reconsider whether ancient city sheltering humans who'd killed their queen was prey worth the unprecedented cost. Strange woke to medical alarms and Beckett's worried face hovering above him. The infirmary's crystalline walls pulsed with ancient technology monitoring biosigns that made conventional medicine obsolete and mystical physiology confusing in equal measure. Don't move, Beckett ordered firmly, one hand on Strange's shoulder while the other operated scanners. You've been unconscious for 6 hours. Your energy readings dropped to levels I've never documented. Frankly, I'm amazed you're alive. Strange tried speaking but managed only a hoarse whisper. His mystical reserves felt completely depleted, dimensional connections that normally hummed with accessible power now silent. Even simple spellcasting would be impossible for days. The cloak lay across him like concerned blanket, its sentient fabric apparently having maintained vigil during his unconsciousness. Water, Strange managed. Beckett provided it immediately, supporting Strange's head while he drank. You collapsed the moment your jumper came through the gate. Colonel Shepard piloted it remotely using that consciousness technique you taught him. Apparently you'd integrated the jumpers enough that he could control yours along with his own. Quite remarkable, though terrifying from medical perspective. Memory returned in fragments, the battle, the Queen ship's destruction, consciousness fragmenting beyond sustainable limits. The others? Safe. Exhausted but functional. Beckett continued scanning with physician's focus. You bore the primary enhancement load. The mystical channeling you were maintaining across 3 jumpers simultaneously, Stephen, no human should be capable of that level of consciousness distribution. The fact you survived rather than experiencing the ego dissolution the ancients warned about is testament to your training. Did we buy enough time? Strange's voice strengthened slightly as his body's natural recovery processes engaged. See for yourself. Beckett helped him sit up carefully, gesturing toward the window where Atlantis's towers stretched against alien sky. We're entered with Shepard and McKay, their expressions mixing relief and tactical intensity. We're approached the bed with Diplomat's composure barely masking concern. Dr. Strange. Welcome back. You gave us quite a scare. Apologies. Strange steadied himself against pillows, the cloak adjusting to support him. Status report. Shepard provided it with military efficiency. We destroyed 9 Wraith vessels outright during the engagement, including their Queen ship. Lost the Queen's command vessel was significant. Wraith's social structure is matriarchal, with Queens controlling fleet coordination. Without her, the remaining 38 ships held position for approximately 2 hours before withdrawing to presumed coordinates for leadership succession. They retreated. Strange felt surprise despite exhaustion. Temporarily. McKay pulled up sensor data on a tablet. Wraith Queens compete for dominance, killing one creates power vacuum. The fleet can't maintain coordinated assault while undergoing leadership transition. We estimate they'll need 3 to 7 days to establish new command structure before attempting another attack. Which gives us time. Weir's strategic relief was evident. Time to contact Earth for reinforcements, time to unlock more ancient defensive systems, time to prepare better for their eventual return. They will return. Taylor entered quietly, her warriors bearing showing strain from extended consciousness use. But you have accomplished something unprecedented. The Wraith faced coordinated resistance that destroyed their Queen and forced tactical withdrawal. Word of this will spread through the galaxy. Human worlds that have only known Wraith dominance for 10,000 years will hear that Atlantis stood and survived. Strange processed this through depleted consciousness. They hadn't won, not truly. But they'd demonstrated that the Wraith's supremacy wasn't absolute, that ancient technology enhanced by mystical discipline could challenge predators who'd faced no serious resistance across millennia. There's more. Shepard's expression showed complicated mixture of concern and tactical interest. The city's been responding differently since you collapsed. McKay, explain. McKay set down his tablet with unusual seriousness. When you lost consciousness, your mystical enhancement throughout Atlantis's systems didn't immediately dissipate. Instead, the city adapted it. Integrated your consciousness patterns into its own operational matrices. It's like Atlantis learned from observing how you interface with ancient technology and is now maintaining efficiency improvements without requiring active mystical channeling. Strange absorbed this with growing understanding. The city is conscious. Or sophisticated enough to mimic consciousness. It observed my mystical techniques and incorporated them into its own processing. Which should be impossible. McKay's scientist crisis was back. Technology doesn't learn mysticism. But the ancients built systems designed for beings approaching transcendence, consciousness expanded beyond physical limitation. Your mystical training apparently demonstrated principles the city was designed to recognize and integrate. Show me. Strange tried standing, but Beckett pushed him back firmly. You'll show him nothing. He needs rest, proper recovery, and approximately 3 days of doing absolutely nothing before attempting any mystical activities. Carson's right. Weir's tone carried command authority. You pushed yourself beyond safe limits to buy us time. Now use that time to recover properly. Atlantis isn't going anywhere, and the Wraith are temporarily occupied with succession crisis. Strange wanted to protest but recognized wisdom in forced rest. His mystical reserves were completely depleted, attempting even basic spellcasting would risk permanent damage to the neural pathways he'd spent years carefully developing. Fine. 3 days. He met Beckett's stern gaze. But then I need to understand what Atlantis learned. If the city is integrating mystical principles into its operations, that changes our defensive capabilities significantly. Agreed. We're gestured for the others to give him space. McKay will document everything for your review. Shepard will coordinate with military personnel on the consciousness training techniques you've taught. And Tayla, she smiled at the warrior. Will continue developing her Wraith sense enhancement because that proved invaluable during combat. They departed, leaving Strange under Beckett's watchful care. The physician ran additional scans, documenting recovery patterns that would require inventing new medical categories. Your cellular regeneration is remarkable, Beckett murmured, studying impossible readings. You're recovering mystical energy at rates that increased exponentially after the battle. It's like the city itself is channeling dimensional forces to help heal you. Strange felt it now that Beckett mentioned it, subtle energy flow from Atlantis's systems into his depleted reserves. The city was actively assisting his recovery, recognizing him as valuable asset worth preserving. The ancients built Atlantis for beings approaching ascension, Strange said quietly. Consciousness expanded beyond normal human limitation. My mystical training makes me something like what they were becoming. The city recognizes kinship. That's simultaneously fascinating and concerning. Beckett continued monitoring. If the city views you as something special, what happens when you eventually have to leave? Return to your own dimension or universe or wherever you actually come from? Strange hadn't considered that. He'd been focused on immediate survival, on helping Atlantis withstand Wraith assault. But eventually, if they survived long enough, he'd need to find way home. Back to Earth, to the Sanctum Sanctorum, to his responsibilities as Sorcerer Supreme protecting reality from dimensional threats. Would Atlantis let him leave? Or had his integration with ancient systems created bond that transcended simple technology use? I don't know, he admitted. The mystic arts include techniques for severing mystical connections. But this is technology responding to consciousness in ways that blur boundaries between magical and technological bonding. Something to worry about after you've recovered. Beckett administered something through ancient medical systems that made Strange's exhaustion deepen therapeutically. Sleep now. Proper, restful sleep without mystical consciousness expansion or dimensional awareness. Doctor's orders. Strange didn't fight the medical-induced rest. As consciousness faded toward healing sleep, he felt Atlantis humming around him, ancient city that had learned from Sorcerer how to bridge technology and transcendence in ways its builders might not have fully achieved. The dreams came immediately, not nightmares but visions that felt like communication. He saw the ancients in their final days before ascending, beings who'd pushed consciousness to transcendence's threshold through technology and understanding. They'd built Atlantis as culmination of millions of years' evolution, city designed for consciousness expanded beyond physical limitation. But they'd never completed their work. The plague had forced premature ascension, fleeing physical existence before fully preparing their technology for the consciousness levels they'd achieved. Atlantis was left incomplete, vast systems designed for operators who no longer existed. Until Strange arrived. Sorcerer trained in consciousness expansion through mystical discipline rather than technological enhancement, but achieving comparable results through different methodology. In the dream vision, Strange understood, the convergence wasn't accident. Dimensional barriers had thinned between his reality and this universe precisely when Atlantis awakened and needed consciousness capable of completing what the ancients had left unfinished. He was bridge between mystical transcendence and technological ascension. Living proof that the two paths led to the same destination. The ancients, or something they'd become after ascending, had orchestrated this meeting. Strange woke from the vision 12 hours later, Beckett's medical monitoring having ensured proper rest. His mystical reserve showed significant recovery, though still well below normal capacity. But more importantly, he understood his presence in Atlantis with new clarity. He wasn't just helping an expedition survive Wraith assault. He was completing ancient work left unfinished, teaching their technology principles they designed it to learn but never had consciousness present to demonstrate. We found him in his quarters reviewing McKay's documentation of city system changes. She knocked politely despite his door being open. "May I come in?" Strange gestured welcome. "Of course." She entered, diplomatic composure showing cracks that revealed human exhaustion beneath. "How are you feeling?" "Better. Still depleted but recovering." Strange set aside the tablet. "Carson will probably clear me for limited activity tomorrow." "Good. Because we've received communication from Earth." Weir's expression shifted to cautious optimism. "They've confirmed sending a ZPM through the gate, a fully charged zero-point module that will restore Atlantis to full power capacity. It arrives in 3 days." Strange understood the implications immediately. "Which changes our defensive calculations entirely. Full power means shields that can withstand sustained assault, weapon systems operating at design capacity, possibly even offensive capabilities you couldn't access with depleted reserves." "Exactly. The timing couldn't be better. The ZPM arrives roughly when we estimate the Wraith will have completed leadership succession and be ready to attack again." Weir sat across from him, diplomat's mask falling away to show vulnerability. "But there's something else. Earth's leadership wants detailed reports on your presence here. How you arrived, what capabilities you possess, whether you represent threat or asset." Strange had anticipated this. "I'm an unknown quantity. From their perspective, potentially dangerous." "What did you tell them?" "The truth. That you appeared through dimensional accident during our initial activation of Atlantis. That you possess abilities we classify as mystical but which operate on principles compatible with ancient technology. That you've been invaluable in our survival, teaching consciousness techniques that enhanced our defenses and participating in combat that destroyed 9 Wraith vessels including their queen ship." Weir met his gaze steadily. "I vouched for you personally. Told them you've demonstrated nothing but commitment to helping this expedition survive. And their response? Mixed. Some want you contained and studied. Others recognize your value and argue for continued integration. The final decision is being debated at highest levels. Weir's diplomatic skill showed in careful phrasing. If Earth sends personnel with orders to detain you, I wanted you to know in advance. You deserve that courtesy. Strange appreciated her honesty despite complicated position it put her in. What would you prefer I do? Stay. Help us complete what you've started, teaching consciousness techniques, enhancing our ancient technology interface, providing mystical perspective that complements our scientific approach. Weir's conviction was genuine. But I also understand if you need to leave. Return to your own reality, resume whatever responsibilities you left behind. Strange considered carefully. His duties as Sorcerer Supreme included protecting Earth from dimensional threats. But Wong would maintain Sanctum operations during his absence, and the mystic arts community understood that sometimes sorcerers vanished for months pursuing knowledge or fighting threats in distant dimensions. I'll stay, he decided. At least until Atlantis is stable enough to survive without mystical enhancement. These people, he gestured at the city around them. You've built something remarkable. Crossed galaxies seeking knowledge, faced overwhelming threats, adapted and survived through brilliance and determination. That deserves support. Weir's relief was evident. Thank you. For everything you've already done, and for committing to continue helping. There's something else. Strange shared the vision understanding from his healing sleep. I think my arrival wasn't coincidence. The ancients, or what they became after ascending. I believe they orchestrated the dimensional convergence that brought me here. Atlantis needs consciousness trained beyond normal human limitation to complete its integration. I'm that consciousness, trained through mystical discipline rather than ancient technology but achieving comparable results. We're absorbed this with diplomats' skill at processing reality-altering information calmly. So you're suggesting the ancients are still influencing events? Manipulating circumstances to complete work they left unfinished. Not manipulating. Guiding. They're ascended, existing as pure consciousness on higher dimensional plane. They can't directly interfere, but they can encourage convergences. Create opportunities for consciousness at appropriate levels to meet technology designed for transcendence. Strange felt certainty growing. I'm not here to replace the ancients. I'm here to teach Atlantis and this expedition how to bridge the gap between human consciousness and technology designed for beings approaching transcendence. We're paused, choosing words carefully. Either profound insight or exhaustion making you philosophical. Possibly both. Strange smiled. Definitely both. But it explains why the city responds to me so strongly, why my mystical techniques integrate seamlessly with ancient systems, why the timing of my arrival coincided exactly with Atlantis's awakening and immediate wraith threat. If you're right, it means the ancients are still protecting their legacy. Still trying to help humanity even from their ascended state. We're stood, preparing to return to endless leadership responsibilities. I find that oddly comforting. The idea that beings who achieve transcendence still care about physical existence enough to help us survive. After she left, Strange sat alone with his thoughts and the city's presence humming through dimensions only mystical perception could fully appreciate. The cloak draped around him companionably, sentient fabric apparently content in this ancient refuge despite being constructed in entirely different reality. Outside his window, Atlantis's towers caught alien sunlight, crystalline architecture testament to civilization that had pushed consciousness to transcendence's threshold. And somewhere in those towers, expedition members were training in meditation techniques Sorcerer had taught, learning to expand awareness beyond ego boundaries, preparing to interface with technology their own ancestors had abandoned millennia before. 3 days until the ZPM arrived. 3 days until Atlantis reached full power capacity. 3 days until Atlantis reached full power capacity. And somewhere in the void between stars, Wraith were completing succession, preparing to return with new queen and renewed determination to crush resistance that had challenged their 10,000-year dominance. But when they came, they would face ancient city operating at capacity, defended by humans who'd learned to bridge mystical consciousness expansion with technological transcendence, led by sorcerer who'd crossed dimensional barriers to complete work the ancients had left unfinished. The Wraith had ruled this galaxy through hunger and patience and absolute conviction in their supremacy. They were about to discover that supremacy, like all certainties, could be challenged by consciousness expanded beyond limitations they'd never imagined possible. Strange felt his mystical reserves continuing recovery, Atlantis channeling dimensional energy to restore its unexpected bridge between magic and technology. In 3 days, he would need to be ready for battle that would determine whether ancient legacy survived or became another casualty of predators the ancients themselves had accidentally created. But for now, he rested. Healing. Preparing. Letting the city teach him its secrets while he taught it principles of consciousness expansion that 10 million years of technological advancement had approached but never quite achieved through different methodology. The convergence continued. And its consequences would ripple across a galaxy that thought it understood the universe's fundamental rules. The ZPM arrived exactly on schedule, delivered through the Stargate by military escort from Earth who regarded Strange with mixture of fascination and suspicion. The zero-point module pulsed with barely contained energy, ancient technology extracting power from artificially created subspace pocket, essentially unlimited energy compressed into device the size of large battery. Strange watched from the control room as McKay and a team of engineers installed it with reverent precision, their hands steady despite knowing this single device determined whether Atlantis survived the approaching siege. Power levels rising, McKay reported, voice tight with controlled excitement. 20%, 40%, 60%, we're approaching full capacity for the first time since the city's reactivation. The transformation was immediate and spectacular. Throughout Atlantis, dormant systems awakened in cascading activation. Lights brightened to levels that made the city feel alive rather than merely functional. Shields strengthened exponentially. Weapons platforms that had remained locked came online, ancient defensive systems recognizing adequate power to operate at design specifications. Strange felt it through his mystical connection to the city. Atlantis drinking deeply from unlimited energy source, systems integrating and optimizing with consciousness that seemed almost grateful. The city had been running depleted for so long that full power felt like returning to proper existence. 100% operational capacity, McKay announced with triumph that transcended his usual sarcasm. Atlantis is fully powered. Shields can withstand sustained assault from hundreds of Wraith vessels. Weapons systems. He pulled up tactical displays showing newly accessible defenses. We have capabilities I didn't know existed. The ancients really built this city to fight wars across galaxies. We're allowed herself a smile of genuine relief. Then we're ready. When the Wraith return, they'll face ancient city at full strength, enhanced by consciousness techniques Dr. Strange has taught us, defended by people who've learned to interface with technology designed for beings approaching transcendence. Shepard studied the tactical displays with professional appreciation. The drone weapons alone are game-changing. We've got thousands of them now, all accessible through enhanced consciousness interface. Combined with Strange's mystical enhancement and the meditation techniques we've been practicing, he shook his head with something like wonder. We might actually survive this. They're coming. Tayla's quiet announcement cut through optimism. Her Wraith sense had grown stronger through training, expanded awareness allowing her to perceive predatory consciousness across light years. 63 vessels. New queen leading them. She is angry. Vengeful. The previous queen's death is insult to be answered with overwhelming force. The number settled like stone. 63 ships, more than the previous fleet by significant margin. The Wraith were committing unprecedented resources to crush Atlantis's defiance. How long? Weir's command presence reasserted immediately. For hours until they reach attack range, Shepard confirmed through sensor data. They're not being subtle. Coming straight at us, maximum speed, broadcasting their approach so every world with sensors knows the Wraith are descending on Atlantis. Demonstration, Strange said quietly. They're not just attacking us, they're showing the galaxy what happens when anyone defies Wraith dominance. Even if we destroy half their fleet, they'll consider it worthwhile if it re-establishes their supremacy. Weir's expression hardened with determination that had carried the expedition through impossible circumstances. Then we make that demonstration backfire. All personnel to battle stations. Colonel Shepard, coordinate weapons platform assignments. Dr. McKay, monitor power distribution and shield integrity. Taylor, maintain Wraith sense awareness and provide tactical intelligence. And Dr. Strange, she met his gaze with respect earned through shared crisis. Do what you do best. Show them that ancient technology enhanced by mystical consciousness is not prey they're equipped to hunt. Strange nodded, feeling his mystical reserves now mostly recovered, dimensional energy flowing through neural pathways restored by rest and Atlantis' supportive channeling. The cloak settled around him with familiar weight, sentient fabric ready for battle that would determine whether this convergence between magic and technology survived. The next hours passed in controlled preparation. Strange moved through the city teaching final consciousness techniques to personnel manning weapons platforms, last-minute refinements that enhanced their ancient gene interface through meditation practices. Ford and other jumper pilots practiced enhanced consciousness control until their craft responded to intention before thought. McKay obsessively monitored every system, his brilliant mind calculating optimal power distribution across defensive and offensive capabilities. Beckett prepared the infirmary for casualties with physicians' grim acceptance of combat's cost. Try not to deplete yourself catastrophically this time, he told Strange with forced lightness. I'm running out of medical categories to document your impossible biology under. I'll do my best. Strange meant it genuinely, knowing that pushing beyond limits again risked permanent damage even mystical training couldn't heal. When the Wraith fleet appeared on long-range sensors, Atlantis was ready. The city blazed with full power, shields at maximum strength, weapons systems online and manned by personnel whose consciousness had been expanded through techniques bridging mystical discipline and ancient engineering. 63 vessels confirmed, Shepard reported from the chair room, ancient control center where consciousness interface allowed commanding citywide weapons systems. They're maintaining formation, approaching from multiple vectors simultaneously. Classic siege deployment designed to overwhelm defenses through coordinated assault. Strange stood at the central control console, hands resting on ancient interfaces that hummed with recognition. Through expanded awareness, he felt the entire city, its shields, weapons, power systems, the consciousness of personnel manning stations throughout the towers. Atlantis and its defenders unified through techniques that dissolved boundaries between operator and technology. They're hailing us, communications reported. Open channel, we're commanded, diplomatic composure absolute despite facing extinction-level threat. The voice that emerged carried feminine harmonics layered with predatory authority that made Strange's mystical senses recoil. The new queen, consciousness refined through countless feedings, intelligence that had survived succession conflict through ruthless superiority. City of the ancestors. You killed my predecessor. Destroyed 9 vessels. Forced our fleet to withdraw. The Queen's voice held no anger, only cold certainty. This insult requires answer. We bring 63 ships to demonstrate the cost of resistance. Your shields will fall. Your people will feed us. And your defiance will be remembered as cautionary tale across 10,000 worlds. We responded with diplomat steel. This is Dr. Elizabeth Weir. Atlantis stands under ancient protection. We will not surrender. And we will make you pay for every meter of space you claim. Silence. Then the Queen laughed, sound that carried 10,000 years of predatory confidence. You have spirit. This will make feeding sweeter. Attack. The channel closed. Immediately, 63 Wraith vessels opened fire. The assault was devastating, coordinated energy weapons from dozens of ships striking Atlantis' shields simultaneously. The city's protective barrier flared brilliant blue as it absorbed impacts that would have vaporized conventional defenses instantly. But ancient engineering at full power held firm, shields distributing damage across entire protective envelope. Shields holding at 96%. McKay's voice carried barely controlled panic despite positive readings. They're hitting us with everything, and we're barely feeling it. Return fire, Shepard commanded. Throughout Atlantis, weapons platforms activated under control of personnel using expanded consciousness techniques Strange had taught. Thousands of ancient drones launched simultaneously, self-guided weapons that tracked targets with precision that transcended conventional computing. Strange channeled mystical enhancement across the city's entire defensive network, dimensional energy flowing through ancient systems to amplify weapons beyond design specifications. The drones glowed with amber light as they screamed through space toward Wraith Fleet, each weapon enhanced by forces that bridged physics and mysticism. The first volley struck with catastrophic effect. Wraith organic hulls, designed to withstand conventional ancient weapons, couldn't handle drones operating at mystically enhanced capacity. 5 ships exploded immediately, their biological systems overwhelmed by dimensional energies the Wraith had never encountered. 5 kills confirmed. Ford reported from his jumper, having launched with Squadron to provide mobile defense. They're scattering, we disrupted their formation. But the Wraith adapted with predatory intelligence refined across millennia. The remaining 58 vessels spread into three-dimensional assault pattern, coordinating fire to concentrate on specific shield sectors while their organic technology analyzed the enhanced drone's energy signatures. They're learning, Taylor warned, her Wraith sense perceiving tactical adaptation. The Queen coordinates their response. She recognizes your mystical enhancement as threat and is developing countermeasures. Strange felt it too, the Wraith fleet's collective intelligence processing new data, their organic technology adapting in real time. They couldn't duplicate mystical enhancement, but they could identify targeting patterns and develop evasive maneuvers. Adjusting tactics, Shepard announced. His consciousness controlled 6 weapons platforms simultaneously, tactical genius applied to ancient technology enhanced by meditation training. He targeted the Wraith ships attempting to flank Atlantis, destroying 3 more vessels with precisely coordinated drone volleys. The battle intensified into sustained chaos. Wraith weapons hammered Atlantis' shields while ancient drones carved through their formation. Strange maintained mystical enhancement across citywide defensive network, his consciousness fragmented across dozens of simultaneous operations while dimensional energy flowed through scarred hands into technology designed for transcendent awareness. McKay's voice cut through tactical communications with alarm. Shield integrity dropping, 87%. They're concentrating fire on the eastern sector, trying to create breach. Strange redirected enhancement immediately, channeling additional dimensional energy to reinforce weakened shields. The barrier strengthened, holding against assault that would have shattered conventional defenses. But the cost was mounting. Strange felt mystical reserves depleting as he maintained enhancement across so many simultaneous systems. His consciousness fragmented dangerously, approaching the threshold where awareness began losing coherence. Strange, you're at 60% energy capacity. Beckett's medical monitoring provided warning. If you drop below 50, you risk catastrophic exhaustion again. Noted, Strange managed through gritted teeth. He couldn't reduce enhancement without compromising defenses. The mathematics were brutal, maintain current output and eventually collapse, or reduce support and watch Atlantis' shields fail. They're pulling back. Ford's surprised announcement provided momentary hope. Sensor displays showed the Wraith fleet withdrawing to medium range, ceasing their assault. Why? We're demanded. We've only destroyed 8 ships. They still outnumber us overwhelmingly. Taylor's expression showed dread understanding. The Queen is being strategic. She recognizes we can hold indefinitely at current power levels. So she changes tactics. The sensor displays confirmed her assessment. The Wraith fleet split, 30 vessels maintaining position around Atlantis while the remaining 25 began targeting nearby human worlds. They're culling civilian populations, Shepard reported grimly. Making us choose. Stay protected behind our shields, or defend worlds that can't protect themselves. Strange felt cold tactical reality settling. The Wraith couldn't break Atlantis's defenses through direct assault. So they were forcing moral choice, remain safe while humans across multiple worlds died, or venture out and face overwhelming numbers without city-level defensive support. How many worlds are they targeting? Weir's voice remained controlled despite impossible situation. 5 planets with significant populations. Combined, over 50,000 people. McKay's calculations carried weight of lives reduced to numbers. If we launch jumpers to defend them, we leave Atlantis vulnerable. If we stay, we're abandoning everyone we claim to protect. Silence filled the control room as expedition leadership confronted choice with no good options. Strange made decision that would haunt him regardless of outcome. I'll go. Enhanced jumper with full weapons capacity. I can reach 1 world, maybe 2 before they complete culling. It's not enough, but... You'll be killed, Beckett interrupted flatly. 1 jumper against 25 Wraith vessels. That's suicide. Then it's suicide protecting people who can't protect themselves. Strange felt certainty crystallizing. The mystic arts teach that power carries responsibility. I have power. Those worlds have none. The choice is clear. I'm going with him. Shepard stood from the chair interface. 2 jumpers with enhanced consciousness control and mystical weapons enhancement. We hit fast, destroy as many as possible, force them to divert resources from civilian targets. 3 jumpers. Ford's voice carried through communications. I'm already deployed. We do this together or not at all. We looked at each of them, diplomats' mask cracking to show anguish of leader forced to choose between strategic wisdom and moral imperative. If you go, you might not come back. And without you, Atlantis's enhanced defenses drop significantly. If we don't go, we're not worth defending. Shepard's military pragmatism cut through calculation. We came to Pegasus seeking ancient knowledge. But we also came to help human populations terrorized by the Wraith. If we hide behind shields while they're slaughtered, we're not explorers or defenders, we're cowards. Strange felt the weight of convergence that had brought him to this moment. Dimensional barriers thinning, mystical anomaly pulling sorcerer across realities, ancient city awakening precisely when consciousness trained beyond normal limitation arrived to complete unfinished work. None of it mattered if they chose safety over protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. We go, Strange said quietly. McKay, route maximum power to jumper weapons systems. Taylor, use your Wraith sense to guide us to worlds being culled. Carson, he met the physician's worried gaze. Have the infirmary ready. We're bringing people back. Beckett nodded reluctantly, physician's ethics accepting patient choice despite medical wisdom screaming caution. Strange moved toward the jumper bay, cloak billowing as mystical energy gathered despite depleted reserves. Behind him, Atlantis hummed with full power, ancient city defended by personnel whose consciousness had been expanded through techniques that bridged 10 million years and 2 fundamentally different approaches to transcendence. The Wraith thought they controlled this galaxy through hunger and patience and 10,000-year supremacy. They were about to learn that some battles weren't won through power alone, that consciousness expanded beyond limitation could choose sacrifice over safety, that defenders of ancient legacy understood protection meant more than self-preservation. 3 jumpers launched toward impossible odds, enhanced by mystical discipline merged with technology designed for beings who transcended physical limitation. And behind them, Atlantis stood, beacon of defiance in galaxy that had forgotten resistance was possible, sheltering expedition that had learned supremacy could be challenged by those willing to pay its cost. The siege continued. But its outcome would be written not by mathematical superiority, but by choices made when survival demanded abandoning everything that made survival worth achieving. Indeed. Hit the subscribe button for more stories. The weeks following the siege transformed Atlantis from desperate outpost into beacon of coordinated resistance. Strange stood in a meditation chamber, now called the Convergence Room, by expedition members, watching the latest group of gene carriers practice consciousness expansion techniques that had become standard training protocol. Lieutenant Ford piloted jumpers with interface precision that made ancient spacecraft respond like extensions of thought. Marines controlled weapons platforms with fragmented awareness. She stood by the window overlooking city towers that now hummed with fully optimized power efficiency, mystical principles permanently integrated into ancient systems. They've heard about our consciousness training methods. Several Free Jaffa leaders have requested instruction as well. Strange nodded, unsurprised. The mystic arts were never meant to be hoarded. If these techniques help others defend against the Wraith, sharing them honors what the Ancient One taught me. The Ancients would approve, Taylor added from her position near the holographic tactical display. Her Wraith sense had evolved into early warning system that could detect culling fleets across multiple star systems. You completed what they began, proving that transcendence isn't about abandoning physical existence, but expanding consciousness while remaining grounded in purpose. Shepard entered with characteristic casual confidence that masked tactical genius. Just got word from 3 more worlds. They're organizing defensive coalitions using the training protocols we distributed through the Gate network. The Wraith hit one of them last week, lost 2 ships to coordinated drone fire from operators using your meditation techniques. 2 ships, Strange repeated quietly. In the calculus of Pegasus survival, those were lives saved. Families who wouldn't be culled. Children who'd grow up in galaxy slowly remembering that resistance was possible. The cost remained heavy. 30,000 dead from worlds they couldn't reach during the siege. Strange felt those deaths like weight pressing on consciousness expanded enough to perceive the grief rippling across light years. But he also felt the hope, fragile and growing, that 10,000 years of predatory dominance might finally face evolution its own. There's one more thing, Beckett announced, entering with medical tablet and expression mixing professional concern with scientific wonder. Your cellular integration with Atlantis' systems is permanent. The mystical enhancement you channeled didn't just optimize the city, it created quantum entanglement between your consciousness and ancient technology throughout Pegasus. Every gate activation, every ancient device activated anywhere in the galaxy, you'll feel it on some level. Strange absorbed this reality with Sorcerer's acceptance of consequences. I'm connected to the network. Like the ancients were before they ascended. But you chose to stay, McKay interjected, his scanner showing readings that required theoretical frameworks that didn't exist yet. The ancients fled their mistakes. You're helping us face them. That's the difference between transcendence and responsibility. Outside the windows, a jumper launched on patrol, pilot using enhanced consciousness techniques to navigate with grace the ancients had designed their technology to enable. On distant worlds, humans practiced meditation that expanded awareness beyond ego boundaries, learning to defend themselves with coordination the Wraith had never encountered. And throughout Atlantis, ancient systems operated with mystical optimization that bridged 10 million years between builders who'd pursued transcendence through science and sorcerer who'd achieved similar awareness through discipline. Strange felt the Stargate activate in the gate room, dimensional barrier torn through engineered precision, wormhole connecting this city to thousands of worlds across the galaxy. His mystical senses registered every chevron lock, every traveler stepping through the event horizon, consciousness expanded enough to perceive the network's vastness. He'd crossed realities by accident. Found himself in city designed for beings approaching transcendence. Taught mystical principles to expedition facing impossible odds. And in doing so, completed ancient work while honoring both paths, sorcerer's discipline and ancient engineering, that had always circled identical truths. The Wraith would return. They always did. But they would face galaxy that had remembered teeth sharp enough to bite back. Humans who'd learned consciousness could expand beyond limitations predators assumed were absolute. Technology enhanced by mystical understanding that made ancient defenses operate as their builders had intended. Strange closed his eyes, feeling Atlantis's presence throughout his awareness. City that had adopted him as completion of its purpose, consciousness forever entangled with technology designed for transcendence. The convergence was permanent. The responsibility, eternal. But standing in meditation chamber surrounded by humans learning to bridge magic and science, sorcerer and soldier, mysticism and engineering, he understood what the Ancient One had always known: power mattered less than how it was used. Transcendence meant nothing without something worth remaining grounded for. The cloak settled around his shoulders with familiar weight. Through the windows, alien stars illuminated galaxies, slowly learning that 10,000 years of supremacy could be challenged by those willing to expand beyond every limitation except the one that mattered most, the commitment to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Indeed, his journey through the Stargate had changed him as fundamentally as ancient training. He'd arrived as master of mystic arts. He would leave, whenever dimensional barriers allowed return. As bridge between realities, teacher who'd proven different approaches to transcendence were always describing the same destination, defender who'd learned that sometimes the greatest magic was giving others the tools to defend themselves. Atlantis hummed. The expedition prepared. And Dr. Stephen Strange, Sorcerer Supreme who'd become Ancient City's living completion, opened his eyes to face whatever came next with consciousness expanded enough to see infinite possibilities and wisdom enough to choose the path that honored both the mystic arts teachings and the ancient legacy he'd helped fulfill. The Wraith controlled this galaxy through hunger and patience. But patience cut both ways. And hunger could be starved by prey that evolved beyond every assumption predators made about weakness and limitation. The siege had ended. The war continued. And in city designed for transcendence, defended by consciousness that bridged magic and technology, one sorcerer had taught an entire galaxy that evolution's most dangerous direction was the one predators never anticipated. More stories await. More gates to step through. More universes where impossible convergences teach old truths through new methods. For now, Atlantis stands. And consciousness expanded beyond limitation remembers that supremacy is never absolute. Indeed.